there, jerk faces. It's your boy Andy, and you're watching Nocturnal Transmissions, brought to you by the Circle of Jerks podcast. It's a conversation you could be having during the day, but having at night. I mean, I know you can from my video feed, you can still see that there's still some daylight, but that's just daylight savings, and there's nothing we can do about it. Plus, we're the people on the East Coast.
It's late for them.
It's late for them. So
yeah. It'll be sunlight here for another couple hours, but I like it. But it is technically night.
Yes, it is technically. It is technically in the evening, so we're rolling with that.
It's not like insomnia where you have it's where there's constant sunlight.
Perpetual daylight, particularly in a certain time of the year.
Oh, the sun's out. It's midnight.
Yeah, there's a place in Norway where you literally get 1 hour of nighttime or daylight. I forget which one is which.
I think it's probably it's probably back and forth. So during the winter, you probably only get 1 hour of daylight, which is got to be awful.
Yeah.
Now for me, I could live with the 1 hour of nighttime. That's fine with me. But good God, 23 hours of nighttime? Fuck that shit.
Anyways, as ever with me co-hosting this thing is the homeboy Rob.
How's it going?
Yeah.
God, that'd be horrifying.
Yeah, just having 24 hours of daytime, and then kind of the opposite of having 24 hours of nighttime. We're just not built that way, and
no. It would drive people mad, I would think.
Yeah, no, and it does. What is it? The Inuits. There's a phenomenon that happens to women that they just because it's nothing but snow all the time. They literally go mad and just run out of their shelters, and rip all their clothes off just out of madness.
Yeah, that's. We think of Seattle as being a place where people are super depressed and all the time because of all the rain. But I think
I hear it's gloomier in Oregon, more so than Washington State. But anyways, we got the usual stream tonight. Topics of the day, and of course the movie review. Honoring one of our favorites, Bruce Willis. Tonight's review will be of what movie did this come out?
Unbreakable.
Yeah, 2000. This movie came out in 2000. Of course, directed by M. Night Shyamalan, starring Bruce Willis, Samuel Jackson, Robin Wright Penn, as she was at the time.
Yeah, that's right. God, I forgot about that.
Yeah, me too. For those of you, Princess Buttercup.
That's right. Oh my God, that's right. She's
Princess Buttercup.
Oh man, I totally forgot about that. She's done a lot of stuff.
She has been in a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I know more recently she's gotten notoriety for being in what is it, House of Cards.
Yeah, and she was phenomenal in that. It's until the season where they kicked off the main Kevin Spacey.
Yeah. What is it? The Bill Clinton character, and then
Oh God, yeah.
Because I do believe the character that Kevin Spacey portrayed is somewhat loosely based off of Bill Clinton.
He's a mixture of a couple of different political figures. Bill Clinton being definitely one of them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just the sheer evil of both him and his wife.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I'm blown away. The writing is just great, and obviously Kevin Spacey steals the show as he tends to do in most movies. And yeah, Robin Wright, she's brilliant in that show too, and that's probably what people know her most for now. But yeah, you go back into her her filmography, it's like, oh man, she's been in this, she's been in this, she's been in a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Although in this one, it's understandable because like her character is like very. She's basically a glorified background character.
Yeah, I know she.
I mean, yeah, she still gets top billing, but like she's I think in the movie like a grand total of like maybe 5 minutes.
Yeah, but even in that 5 minutes, she's still great.
Yeah.
But yeah, super excited to talk about, especially because I think it's very appropriate that we're doing Unbreakable, just because obviously we've had a lot of new superhero films come out, and this is essentially a superhero film, but in a different way. And I think that M. Night Shyamalan,
or more accurately, a comic book movie.
Or that's it's a comic book movie, and I think if approached the correct way, M. Night Shyamalan really has something that's original and different than anything else that's going on right now. And
or at the time, I think it might be fair to. I mean, say what you will about M. Night Shyamalan, but I think in this respect, I think he was a bit ahead of his time.
Well, because this is before, because this is kind of.
Well, I mean, this is like this is after Marvel's first attempt, like it proper with Blade.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. I always forget.
Yeah, I mean and actually, arguably, Blade is the reason why we have the MCU. Is because Blade did become a success, commercially, and so like it gave studios was like, okay, this worked out, so like maybe we can try like other superhero movies.
It was the highest grossing comic book movie up until like obviously that it was Marvel's first success, but then it was the highest grossing film Marvel or any comic book movie up until the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans, and then and then like from there, obviously like it really sparked a lot because this Unbreakable comes about right after that kind of the really bad Batman films. Like they're really bad.
The Schumacher era of Batman movies.
God, it's so bad. Which is a continuation technically of the Tim Burton 1989 Batman. All four of those movies are supposed to be connected.
Yeah, exactly. It's at least it tries to follow his the aesthetic set down by Tim Burton, but there are some like crazy deviations. I mean, just like the color, like the neon color palette that Joel Schumacher infuses into it, it definitely took it away. I mean, don't get me wrong, there is color in the Burton aesthetic or the Burton palette, but it's not as fluorescent.
It's not neon, it's not like we're in Las Vegas or something like that. It's some it's crazy. But yeah, so it's the end of that era, and then Blade was kind of like this, like, oh man, what's this? This is awesome. Like vampire. It's like essentially like I think a lot of people didn't know who Blade was.
Right. I mean, I mean, I didn't really know who Blade was. I was first, but luckily, Spider-Man the animated series did tap into the vampire story, and that was actually my first introduction to the character of Blade, and I was like, man, this guy is awesome. It's like he was really intriguing too, because he's like half vampire. He has all their strengths, none of their weaknesses, and he has and he fights something within himself, which is the thirst, the need to consume blood.
Right.
And that that's a very compelling character where like he's like this. He's supposed to be this evil like creature of the night, but he has like this. He has this redemptive like humanity. But he's constantly fighting that inner demon. And
and Wesley Snipes.
Say what you will about Wesley Snipes, he really killed. He killed that performance. Although there were like a few slips here and there, you know,
2
in
and
there
3 were
when
nice.
he no well like in the first movie alone, like you know there was that scene, Blade is supposed to be like this kind of stoic figure, um, but then there was that scene in like the hospital where he's being shot at, and he's like, "Are you kidding me, Are you kidding me, motherfucker?" And then like he kind of slipped into like
Well, I
that,
think he slipped
New
into.
Jack City, Wesley Snipes.
Oh, I was gonna say Simon Phoenix from Demolition Man, Wesley
Well, oh
Snipes.
yeah, that too.
But I do like I do like his portrayal of Blade. So that was a success, and then we get Unbreakable, and that's something like something really different. And this is before all like the Raimi Spider-Mans, the Chris Nolan's Batman trilogy. And actually, I don't know if you ever watched this show, but it was very popular for a short time. Was Heroes on NBC, which is kind of like a similar
Yeah, I never got
idea.
into it. Although I watched but I understand, but I knew about all of like kind of like the memes, like save the cheerleader, save the world, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I knew about the memes, but I never got into Heroes when it was on. And then
first two seasons,
I watched
awesome.
the reboot, like the kind of like the reboot a little bit, or like kind of what's the word I'm looking for?
They were kind of like restarting the franchise because the first two seasons, great, they're really good. The
Right? Yeah,
third
no, I heard
season,
good things about it.
yeah, the third season sucked ballsack. And then man, it's so disappointing because there were a lot of storylines that they should have like continued or gone with, but they went this other weird direction. And obviously, the show ended after that season, right? And of course, because it sucked. But then they did like a reboot a couple of years afterwards, and I was like, yes, this is what the third season should have been. This is good. But that I by that point, like the I think the luster had kind of gone away, and especially too with like the MCU is starting, and it's like we have really good comic book stuff, and this is also like where I know like the CW kind of started
Yeah,
their
the
stuff.
Arrowverse.
Yeah, which actually for a time was pretty good, and then obviously we got the Netflix Daredevils and all that stuff, and so by that time like here nobody cared about heroes anymore.
Right. Yeah, which is a shame because they are taking like the comic book tropes, but like they were creating something new and like coming up with like
Yeah,
original characters and such like that. But there's something to be said about familiar characters, like from Marvel or DC or whatever.
right.
Yeah, and actually like the first few seasons of The Flash was really great.
Hmm.
And I really enjoyed the actor that they got to play Barry Allen. Grant Gustin, I believe is his name. He did, yeah. He was very compelling. He was very likable.
Who probably should have been the Flash in the DC universe.
I know they should have. They should have like they what is it? Warner Brothers did the opposite when they went or I don't know why they did it, but like they should have just took in like what was working in like their TV universe and just transferred it over to
Or he would have been fine in
the
he would have
cinematic
been
universe. I mean,
he would have been
which is the opposite
fine.
of what Marvel did. Is like they established like their cinematic universe and they kind of brought it a little bit of it to TV, and it still worked.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know why I don't know why Warner Brothers or DC didn't try applying the inverse to that and bringing
Yeah.
Grant
Like,
Gustin into the cinematic universe, making him. I mean, because Ezra Miller, I mean,
what a
he is
walking
just
disaster.
he's just a train wreck.
And before, like, because I was like, I kind of after we did our Justice League, the Snyder cut review, I was like, okay, like I felt better about Ezra Miller playing the Flash because I mean obviously the Justice League sucked. It made everyone look bad, but the Snyder cut was like, okay,
Right,
I
and it made the Flash an important character, like, and then it made me like root for him too, like especially at the end, when he's using when he's using his powers to like reverse time, and it's like you start rooting for this kid,
yeah.
and And I was like, yeah, I can't. And then like that made me want to see him like in like kind of like their version of the Flashpoint, Flash movie that's supposed to come up. But now like with all of like his personal stuff, like kind of coloring, his film work, it's actually kind of sad.
Yeah, and what I would say is like dump his ass, get the guy that's been doing Flash shows who doesn't have the controversy around him, is decent enough. And I think you kind of just you might have to reshoot a few things, but you save yourself a lot of headaches.
Right, and it's really sad too because like a lot of these movies they're having to go back and like do like expensive reshoots, and I mean like even like like even with like the whole what's her face Amber Heard situation,
Yeah.
like them like essentially Aquaman 2 is like in the can more or less, but I hear they're like paring down her role and the amount of screen time she has in this movie.
Oh, you know that they're watching
So,
that court case.
oh no, yeah, and like they're not liking what they're hearing, or they're
They're
not
like,
liking what they're finding out, and it's like,
yeah,
ah, oh, damn it, like we bet on the wrong horse is essentially what's going on at Warner Brothers. Like, oh shit, all right, cut her out of this scene, that scene, remove her from this scene, to reshoot that. And it's like, it's gonna get really expensive.
Yeah, I don't know, man. DC really like. It seems like when it came to Marvel, they whoever their casting directors were, or whoever their casting guys were spot on. Like they, there was a few like, I don't know about this or that. Like the Brie Larson one, like whatever. But for
Wait,
the most part,
you mean Marvel?
yeah, I'm talking about Marvel. Like
Oh,
whoever their casting people are,
oh,
they've
because I think you
they,
said DC, so I got
no,
confused.
no. Maybe I cut out a little bit. What I was saying is like I don't know what DC's problem is, but for whatever Marvel, whoever their casting person is, they've been spot on like from the get go almost. DC has been a walking disaster. Like it's just they're not getting like the right. They've gotten a few actors right. I think they you cast a guy like Ben Affleck who's a good actor director. He's a good casting. I thought Jeremy
Yeah.
Irons was
Oh yeah, Jeremy Irons
brilliant.
Alfred. I want
I
more
wanted
of
more of
Jeremy
that.
Irons Alfred. I mean,
Yeah,
not to knock Andy Serkis because I think he did a good job too, but Jeremy Irons Alfred, like, yeah, like
brilliant.
he seems like the like retired MI6 like butler that that we all want to see, and like we wouldn't mind like if he had like a standalone movie of his own.
Hell yeah, I want, dude. Jeremy Irons is a badass. I love Jeremy Irons. Who
Yeah.
we'll talk about more next week. But yeah, it's so that was good. I thought Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. That was great. Um, and I was like, even like when I was like when they heard like Jared Leto as the Joker, I was like, oh, okay, I like Jared Leto. I think he's a good actor.
Yeah,
And
and I
then
and I and
obviously,
I do feel bad. I do feel bad for him that he had to follow Heath Ledger.
yeah, and
That
that's
just that was just like that's kind of like tough luck for him. But I think if there was some distance between uh, Heath Ledger and when they did Suicide Squad, it wouldn't have been a problem. But
yeah, needed more distance.
yeah, um,
But like you
but
said, this the DC universe, man, they're fucking it up. Every every step of the way, and especially like some of their and Ezra Miller, who like he's not just like some like we can kind of recast this guy. Like he's one of your major linchpin characters, and man, you
right.
are shitting bricks right now because of him.
Hmm.
We
Yeah,
are
because like there was like that there was that first like kind of assault thing that was recorded and uploaded to the internet. And to his defense, like it wasn't a good angle, and like whoever was recording like kind of pulled away pretty didn't get it like a really good angle, so we don't know like if it was like he was messing around, you know, and they're like, and like the fan was like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if you did, like, if you like pretended to like strangle me, you know,
And that's what they do. Who knows? And
yeah,
like I said,
exactly. And so like, yeah, we don't know, like, to his defense, like, we don't know like what the, you know, preceding interactions were, but this latest one, it's pretty bad.
yeah, well, it's not like and because the video we get, it almost seems like it's towards the end of like the whatever was going on. So we don't know. Maybe like he got called like a hey you fucking fag, and like it's like what? Yeah, it's like and I could totally see that being a possibility. But yeah, these other like couple instances, like him being in Hawaii, like he is terrorizing people.
Yeah, exactly. So
So and it's just crazy stuff.
yeah,
So yeah, super excited about talking about Unbreakable. I think it's a very unique comic book movie.
yes. So yeah, that to look forward to. I don't know. I guess yeah, we kind of I don't know how to get into these things, but all right, let's get into the topics, I guess, or topic because we don't really have a second one. Um, but just this past weekend, you know, there are a bunch of shootings. None least of which, you know, like, I mean, the countless, like, you know, numbers that are, you know, that the number of deaths that happened in Chicago alone should be, should be talked about at length. Yet it, it goes, unreported. But just recently in Buffalo and here, right, kind of in our backyard in Orange County, there was a shooting
Yeah.
at a church. But yeah, we're gonna start with the Buffalo shooting, and it's yeah,
I'm
yes,
sorry.
hometown, Rob's favorite football team, the Buffalo Bills.
That
Um,
that town is fucking nuts. Let me tell you. Not only like just look at Bills fans. They call them the Bills Mafia for a reason. They are nuts. Yeah. But like that town has been a place with like very interesting riots. I think wasn't McKinley was shot there and killed.
I'm not 100% sure.
I think one of the presidents was assassinated in Buffalo,
Mm-hmm.
or at least was shot there. And then you have like all it's just a wild town. Um, yeah, it's not quite the as insane as it's been back in like the early 20th century, but yeah, having something like this happen in Buffalo, which yeah, it's weird because there was a number of years ago, I think it was like maybe like 10, 15 years ago, like because nobody wanted to move to Buffalo.
Right.
So they were, it's cold. It's the a lot of the jobs there were dying out because
Right, because it was an industrial kind of city,
yeah.
manufacturing, steel work, what have you.
Yeah, so New York was paying people, they were giving away homes and like paying people to live and work in Buffalo.
Yeah,
That was
so it's kind of like a reverse. It's kind of like an Alaska situation.
yeah, yeah. It's just like,
Yeah.
and that's how bad it was. And that, and it's like, I think, Buffalo was kind of starting to come back a little bit, but then and unfortunately you get shit like this that goes on. And right. It seemed like the, we've had the whole Roe versus Wade stuff going on, and that's still happening. But I think the fervor was starting to, at least in the media, was dying down just a little bit. And we talked about the baby formula shortage. Oh, and stuff is starting to the focus is starting to turn back around on the administration. And oh, guess what happens? A couple of mass shootings. Imagine that.
Right. Yeah. This happening. Yeah, definitely feels a little glowy. Again, not saying that the government orchestrated this, but
Yeah,
they didn't. But they didn't prevent it. And again, kind of like in the situation with the Parkland shooter. There was like FBI knew about this kid, and I mean, I don't know. I don't remember if there was like a file on him, like with like. Because in the Parkland case, there was like at least 3 people called the FBI saying, "Hey, I'm freaked out by this guy. I think he's capable of shooting up the school."
he's made
And
threats. He had he there
yeah, he's
there
weird. Yeah. I mean, yeah, and so it's not as though like this is like, oh, who could have foreseen? Like, no, this kind of like the Parkland kid. There's a record of this kid.
right. Well, and
And and yet the federal government didn't do anything. So yeah, I'm not saying that they quote unquote orchestrated this, but they didn't do anything to stop it.
yeah, it's just the uh I'm not saying like this is not like some sort of false flag attack and like that it's not real. No, that's not what I'm saying. It is very real, and what happened to these people is horrible, and that's really what we should be focused on is let's mourn a little bit before we start trampling across the graves to have some agenda put out there. But that's what the media does. That's what the federal government does. That's just what they do. Um,
Yeah.
but what I was telling you earlier, like before we started doing the live stream, is that it always seems like from what we've been learning about like how the FBI has operated, it's not like they're orchestrating things like how we've found out that oh man, like a lot of these FBI agents they were involved with the Whitmer kidnap plot, and oh man, they were really involved in the January 6th debacle.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, with the Whitmore one, it was like 3/4 of the core group were either agents or informants.
Yeah. So
Three
it's not
quarters.
like that. Yeah, that's should scare the hell out of you. But that's not what they're doing here. Not at least not what I can see. What I'm seeing here is where the incompetence takes part, where or maybe not incompetence, maybe it's more corruption. But like where they are there's stuff going on with these people. They don't just wake up. It's like, you know what? I feel like I've been playing a lot of Call of Duty lately. I've been playing a lot of Grand Theft Auto. You know what? Let's shoot up the school or let's shoot up a church. That sounds fun. No one does that. Okay,
Right.
it's
Right.
radicalized. Overnight over something. They're fucked up in the head or they have something wrong with them and there's a lot it's not just like there's signs. Okay, they have either been abusive towards their friends and family, they have threatened their friends and family, the people around them. It's possible that they have other charges, weapons charges or whatever else against them. It's very possible, like in a lot of cases. Like we talked about the kid from Parkland. Everyone knew it's like he's making threats. We know that there's something going on, and there's enough evidence there and enough legal precedent and that should allow either him be jailed or institutionalized, yet it didn't happen, and I imagine it's kind of the same thing in this case.
Right. And don't get me wrong, we're not talking about like red flag laws here. But we're talking about due process. There's like enough. There was enough actionable stuff on like okay, I don't know about this like recent kid in Buffalo, but like Parkland, like there was enough stuff where like they could start an investigation. They could have gotten the ball rolling on him, like either being like involuntarily like committed or just be placed, just like be or just be put under, what is it, observation or something.
Yeah, it's
But it didn't happen. The like due process didn't take place, and I mean again, like it's kind of like maybe it's like unintended consequences, or it's just flat out evil. But it's like that Parkland kid fell through the cracks because because of an Obama policy that was trying to reduce the number of like delinquents or whatever, or like reports of delinquency in high schools or whatever, and it's like, and one of the ways of doing that is just not reporting the kid, and so it's like, that's a way of like bringing down, like, oh, look at under my policies, we've reduced the number of delinquents in public schools. It's like, no, you're just not reporting these potentially homicidal maniacs.
That's like Stalin, like, erasing like that picture of his like former friends. Like, what friend? Yeah.
Right, yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, like, yeah, it's like, what delinquent? What, he didn't, like, yeah, it's like, oh, it's like, oh, it's just boys being boys or whatever. It's just like, no,
Yeah.
you're willfully, not addressing the situation in hopes for you to, like, look good. It's like, oh, look what I did, but you didn't do anything.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's hilarious because only in that, like, this is like the mass shooter that they are hoping for, like it checks all the boxes, like, loner kind of white guy with, racist views, like, I don't know if he identified as an incel, but probably like an incel type guy. But it's funny, like, because they, what is it, they blocked all access to his manifesto, but like from what I've heard, like, he equally considered himself left wing as he considered himself right wing. And interestingly enough, he agrees with gun laws. Like, he thought that there should be more gun laws.
Yeah, I mean,
and then he picked that target because he knew that no one would be armed, like, to like shoot back at him.
Exactly. That's what these people do, because, like, oh, there's no one that's gonna fight me back. There's no one that's gonna shoot back.
Right. Yeah. Interestingly enough, I recently visited a mall this past weekend, and as I was walking around, I did see a sign. That's that basically said, like, like, no, no firearms allowed in this mall, and I'm just like, oh man, I felt so safe. I felt so safe. I knew that sign was gonna keep me safe. Someone who's like who had bad intentions, was gonna walk in, see that sign, it's like, dang it, and then walk right back out. I just knew it. So I couldn't tell you how safe I felt.
I wear those like Kevlar, and it protects me. Just.
But yeah, but it's like, it's funny because, like, even in his manifesto, he said, like, yeah, I picked this location because no one would be armed and no one could fight back. But also, like, he got his weapon legally. He, like, even in New York, where it's like fucking as crazy as California, like, I think, like, in New York, like, you can't have detachable mags, so like the AR-15 that you get is like it's just an attached mag.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So and what was it? He was able to, like, make modifications so that he could use magazines, detachable magazines, and so it's like, and like, of course, the governor, Kathy Hochul, like, came out to, like, oh yeah, we're gonna need more gun laws. It's like, bitch, the laws that you had already on the books didn't prevent this. What makes you think that more laws is gonna do it?
Well, these are the same people who, even though, like, they, we already have hate crime laws, but we need an anti-lynching bill. It's like, you already have one, dumbass.
I know, right? It's like, yeah, it's like the law against murder.
Oh, but it's not explicitly stated. It's like, well, yeah, no shit, but that doesn't mean, obviously, like, this.
Okay, so if I murder someone with a feather, then that's not a problem. Or if I kill someone with kindness, then that's okay.
Yeah. Actually, that kind of reminds me of a great bit from crazy left winger Patton Oswalt. But he had a really funny bit about how, like, after you turn, like, a certain age, like, once you get to, like, 90, you can start kind of, like, circumventing, like, laws. Like, initially it's easy, like, you can you can, like, litter in front of a cop, no ticket or whatever. And it's like, but when you get to 100, you can legally murder. Now you can't shoot or stab or poison somebody, but you can literally beat someone to death. It's like, because who's gonna stop? Who's gonna like run to help to your aid? Where it's like, help! A 100-year-old man is punching me to death. It's like,
Yeah, no, I mean, what is it? I said it before. Like, show me an indifferent crime.
Yeah.
It's like, son, why'd you beat that man to death? It's like, oh, it just seems like the thing to do.
And honestly, that's more terrifying to me, if anything. Where
Actually, yeah, like the kind of like the like the totally like disconnected kind of murderer or even thief. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we kind of play it up for laughs, like show me an indifferent crime. It's like son, why'd you steal from all of those senior citizens? It's like, oh, it's a Thursday.
Yeah, it's like that's what 99% of crimes are not indifferent. There's some reason.
Yeah, there's like some there's malice already built into, like, the idea of crime.
And then that other 1% are complete psychopaths and evil.
Right. I mean, even like what is it like? I guess like even like the victimless crimes too. There's, I guess, is there malice? Or at least there's okay, maybe not malice, but there there is a degree of criminality.
Yeah,
because
it like what this guy did is just, it's evil. He is
it's funny because it's evil, but he acquired he acquired everything he needed legally. It's not like he went and like stole, well, it'd be the stupidest move in the world, but like he didn't like go and like hold up a gun store, or he didn't go, or he didn't go and like
like you want to hold somebody up.
Yeah, no, and he didn't go and like go hold up like a army surplus store for his kit. He got everything legally, and he got his car legally, and he just drove up, probably obeying all the speed laws, and moving like ordinances, and
he was a crazy person that finally, whatever like last like bit that like was holding him back from evil snapped that day. And but the thing is, like I said, that pot like boils over beforehand. Like you see the signs. Like there was probably some sign of abuse. There's probably some signs of threats. Like you don't, that manifesto was not written overnight. There's probably a lot of stuff that he has talked about that it's like, you should probably talk to somebody. Somebody saw something.
It's really interesting too, because like one of the things that leftist journalists or pundits will highlight is like, oh, he believed in like replacement theory, and just like, he does mention it in his manifesto.
Yeah.
But it's so funny because he was like, oh yeah, like foreigner, or like immigrants are outbreeding the white race or whatever. And it's like we have to have more babies. And it's like he didn't even follow his own advice.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're really that worried about being replaced or whatever, have babies. Go find yourself a nice white girl and start making babies.
It's like, oh, that Mexican family that I hate down the street had 10 kids. Well, we're gonna have 20.
I know, right? Exactly, and that's all like.
And honestly, like, wouldn't that be so much more fun?
Yeah, the solutions are obvious. It's like, oh, they're outbreeding us. It's like we have to outbreed them. It's like, solution.
Yeah. It's like, but that's not what these, and I think a lot of it too, we have people in the media are like, oh, well, he thought this, like, oh, this is what, such and such, quote unquote, conservative pundits said, they're radicalizing him. It's like, No, he was fucking nuts before any of this started.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, because it's like, because yeah, because like when the aukesha thing happened, everyone, the fucking media was bending over backwards to come up with oh, it's like, oh, it wasn't because he hated white people. It's because he was fleeing from a domestic dispute, or or he was, what is it? He was on his way to an Uber thing or something, or
Yeah,
his
he was
his
late
his
to one
GPS
thing.
his GPS took him down the wrong street.
Yeah, he was just he was just going a little bit faster than normal. It's okay.
Yeah.
He had
Or no, no,
no
no, or no, no, no. It wasn't him. It was the car. It was the
the,
car
the
that
car
drove that
did
like Christined its way into like the fucking
it. Yeah.
into the fucking parade.
Just like like I'm sure, like this guy, he didn't do anything wrong. The gun jumped out of his hand and killed however many people. It was the
Yeah,
gun.
so yeah, like a freak lightning bolt hit it, and like the gun gained sentience and just went on a murderous rampage.
He's like powder in that sense. Like it wasn't his fault.
Powder. Damn, that's a deep cut.
Just like, give me a fucking break. People are fucked up. There's evil in this world. Like,
Yeah, what was
okay.
it? Like someone, like one of the survivors or something was even saying that. Of course, like that shit got suppressed. But he was like saying like, yeah, it's like that guy was fucked up. Like it wasn't the gun that did anything. It was the guy that did it.
Yeah, he's just an evil piece of shit that's gonna rot in hell. That's okay. That's there's a lot of things that happen in this world that are we why do they hate us? Why would they do something like that? Because they're fucked up and crazy and evil. That's just a part of our world. We've been dealing with that for millennia. It's just something that people have to deal with. It's not as maybe not as common as we look at in the history books, but it still exists in a lot of places in the world.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, yeah, it's interesting because like I had this conversation with this guy, and he was like, he's like one of those types that like just kind of like expound, who likes to expound, and we're kind of talking theology, and then he went into like saying like, oh, God creates everything, so like God creates evil, and I was like, no, 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 no. It's like no. It's like no, like God doesn't create a good God can't create evil. It is we creation, human beings. We're the ones that create evil. And I had to like correct him on that because that's like bad theology. Like right away, it's like gotta stop it.
Well, because then you get like the dualism, like where God and Satan are in this like constant arm wrestling match that like nobody it's like nobody wins.
Right.
Like, oh, sometimes evil is stronger today than good, and well, now God's got the upper hand. It's like, no.
No, yeah, it's exactly. I mean, if you believe, then you know that you've already have the victory in Jesus. Um, I mean, that doesn't mean keep struggling, um, but you ultimately have the victory within Jesus. But anyways, yeah, yeah. So I have to like tell him we create evil in God doesn't create evil. We do insofar as what God whatever God commands, that's good, and if we go against it, then that's evil.
Yep.
And so similar in this situation, like this, the moral law, thou shalt not kill. Like the kid went against it, so he's evil. Simple as that. Um, but again, like this kind of happened at like the most opportune time for Democrats and Joe Biden specifically, because people were starting to ask a lot of questions about gas and about the economy and the supply chain, and then just magically this time this shooting happens, And it checks all the boxes. He's white. He said some racist things. He said some anti-Semitic things. Now the news cycle is completely
ensconced with this.
Yeah. The lead story is this, and it's not. And again, I'm not saying that they're the ones that like concocted it, but I'm just saying that they didn't stop it, and they're definitely using it.
Oh, they're slapping fives at in the White House right now. Like it's
seriously,
like,
say, "Oh, thank God," or I mean,
Jen Psaki's like, "Oh, thank God, I don't have to answer any stupid questions for She's counting the days till she goes to MSNBC.
Seriously, it's so weird. Like they did, it's almost like an NBA trade. Saki's going over to MSNBC, and then MSNBC is giving us, again another box ticker because she's like a black lesbian.
Oh Jesus.
Yada yada yada. Person empowered, person of color, who won't even think about like whether or not she got the job because she's black.
Spoiler alert, it is.
Yeah, of course it is.
The first black gay person that does the press. She's the press secretary, the first one. It's like okay,
yeah,
who cares?
It's like, how about we just like qualify? How about just qualify?
The press secretary is
it's really a thankless job.
Yeah, it is. Like
it really is. I mean, you're out there constantly running flack for your boss.
Yeah, they're spin doctors. That's
exactly. So yeah, it really is a thankless job. Although I must admit that I do miss Kayleigh McEnany's folder of facts. That was just awesome.
That was pretty fun.
Yeah,
I'll admit.
Especially like every time like she went out there, she hit them like with like their own words into their face, and then again, and then like still, and then had to hear them like with their twisted takes on everything, and then again in like the notebook in her binder of like facts, just like hit them back with like their own words. It was just beautiful.
She went like all Richard Dawson, like it's like, what? Oh, that's your answer. Oh, well, survey says. Oh, yeah. you did say that. Oh, okay.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. But
that was pretty fun. I did enjoy that. But yeah, that job is it's stupid. It's you couldn't pay me enough money to take that job, and yeah, like I said, it's just like this.
I know. If I was like press secretary, I'd probably just call them all names.
Yeah, it's this weird.
Well, your breath smells like farts. Next, and then move on to the next person.
Well, it's like this weird incestuous relationship, like where you have this government position, and they're technically kind of a media person, and like a lot of times they go into media afterwards, and then when their guy is out of office, and all of a sudden another
like
guy,
George Snuffleupagus. And admittedly Kayleigh McEnany too. Even though Trump initially signed that thing where he said like I won't let any one of my like staff or whatever go into media after my my presidency, but then
sure enough that's what happened.
Sure enough that's what happened.
But see, that's to me, even on that, like, no, I don't think that's good, because it's just this weird, it's gross, it's icky.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's like it's all of like it's almost like swinging, and like wife swapping, and again, like this incestuous.
That's a great. It is like wife swapping. It's gross.
Yeah, it's wife swapping, and what is it? And like and like the press is supposed to be this what is it? This what is it? Watchmen who are supposed to be in opposition to like the regime, like the administration, regardless of party, but
yeah, they're all sucking each other off. It's gross. But yeah, that's
Yeah, but that was the Buffalo shooting, and then less talked about is, I mean, unless you're like in, Orange
Oh,
County or
yeah.
greater Los Angeles area, this shooting that happened at this Taiwanese church in Laguna something or other. I don't know if it's Laguna Hills or Laguna Beach.
Something like that, yeah.
Somewhere in OC, yeah. But yeah, it was like this Taiwanese church, and it was perpetrated by this recent like Chinese national who immigrated. But he was old as hell, so
That's not surprising at all. It's like that's
yeah,
surprising.
Not surprising. Of course, yeah. But, he had anti-Taiwanese sentiments. He goes into a Taiwanese church and shoots up the place. There was I think there was five injuries and one death.
That's why it's not talked about. I guarantee it.
Probably. But the hero there was a doctor, John Chang, 52, who was survived by his wife and two children. But he rushed the guy, which then gave other parishioners time to pin him down. But of course, not before he got a shot off, killing the good doctor.
Damn. Yeah. But that guy's a hero.
Yeah, that guy's a hero. But yeah, and luckily, like, he was the only death. Yes, there was others who were injured or shot, but not non-fatally.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank God for that. But yeah, that's because I barely heard about this story, and like now that you're kind of sharing some of the details, is like, oh yeah, you have this Chinese guy, an expat,
This mainland Chinese guy who was a recent a recent immigrant.
who of course is obviously hates Taiwanese people, as most Chinese people do, at least ones that are like closely tied to the
Communist
Chinese
Party.
Party. Yeah, and say, oh yeah, well, I'm gonna, they're not real people, so I'm just gonna kill them, and yeah, that's how that's what they believe. It's they hate God and they hate Taiwanese people. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, pretty simple.
But because we have this, this goes back to like, oh well, that's not a convenient narrative. It's not a white guy shooting up Taiwanese people. The rise.
Yeah, I mean, they don't. They don't. If it's one of their own killing one of their own, then nobody cares. Yeah. I mean, just look at Chicago. Every weekend you have like a fucking Mogadishu. Every weekend in Chicago, but no one talks about it because it's mostly black on black crime.
Actually, that you talking about that, it kind of brings up an interesting point that I heard about this week. It kind of it mixes up like a little bit of this idea of things that don't match up to the narrative don't get talked about, and kind of also deals a little bit with the abortion issue too. I forget the guy's name. He's a black guy, and he was kind of leading. It was an anti-abortion rally, and it's like, you guys say that like all Black Lives Matter, right?
Oh yeah, I saw. Yeah, it was outside of a hospital.
Yeah, and like, everyone like fucking went nuts. Yeah, it's okay. Well,
yeah, one fucking bitch like got down on her knees. to show like how much she thought Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, and then he said to like it's like so the Black lives black people that are killing Black lives, do those lives matter? Yeah,
like a little quieter, like yeah,
and it's like, well, what about like that black cop that was gunned down by a white guy? Did that guy's lives matter? Yeah. Like,
quieter still, like yeah.
Kill the womb before they're born. You're quiet on that one. Those Black lives don't matter. So like what? So it was just like,
it's funny. I think that's an old clip that just kind of like recently resurfaced.
Maybe it did resurface, but still, the sentiment.
I mean, just judging by like all the mass stuff. I mean, I know, but like all of like the mass stuff, people outdoors.
God, but to be honest though, those. That's how you tell a Democrat to to a
Pretty much.
conservative.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I honestly like. There are some times where I can't tell. Based on like watching stuff, it's like, is this an old clip from like 2020 or I don't know, or
Yeah.
is this
No, because
today?
like yeah, I know I know the clip you're talking about, but I could have sworn like when I saw it like pop up again more recently, I could have sworn like that was an old clip. 'Cause, like I think I saw it because like just going by like the number of people wearing masks outdoors, like I want to
Yeah,
say that was like early like or kind of like mid 2020s, especially like especially after the whole George Floyd thing.
yeah, and it's very possible. Like this is the first time I had seen it.
Right.
Yeah, it's very possible it was from 2020, but the idea is still remains.
Yeah. The point that he's making is still as relevant as if it were an old clip. Because yeah, like what is it? In New York City or New York State, the odds of a black baby being born or aborted is 50-50. A flip of a coin.
That's horrifying.
That's horrifying. It's saying a baby is just as likely to be aborted as it is to be birthed.
Yeah, you want to talk
Yeah.
about oppressing.
Yeah, if you want to talk about the
Minorities.
oppression of like minorities and black people specifically, then let's talk about that. All right,
Yeah,
and everyone like everyone's like freaking out about like representations. Like, well, why don't you stop killing your babies? And maybe you could overtake white people.
yeah, and the other thing too, like you have an organization that is run by rich white liberals in Planned Parenthood who have been manipulating and
Who's
stealing.
Bill Gates' father, Bill Gates Sr. helped found with Margaret Sanger.
No shit.
No shit.
That explains a lot of his weird, kooky views. Because he's all about like, oh, we need to
Oh yeah,
eliminate
like one of these
population.
numbers has to go down.
We need to get rid of those babies over in Africa. Yes.
Yeah, like his fucking like
Oh,
TED
man.
his TED Talk presentation or whatever, talking about like lowering the population. Like, one of these numbers have to go down.
The entire world population could live in Texas. It'd be uncomfortable, but they could all live in Texas.
Yeah, and here's another thing. They keep saying how like the global like birth rate is going down, and yet every year they're saying that there's more like billions of more people being born or whatever. It's like which one is it?
Yeah.
Like how can like the global like average birth rate is down, and yet like what was it like just like a few years ago it was like 7 billion people on the planet, but like and like but now it's like 8.5 billion. Like how does that work? Like if
Yeah,
the
it's weird.
it can't be too you can't have ice cream and cream at the same time.
Yeah.
Like
Well, we just
saying
looked
like
at
yeah
the
here
sun.
like here have some ice cream and then like you pour it into my bowl. It's like what the fuck is this shit?
Well, it's the elements of ice cream.
Right? It's ice cream soup.
Yeah.
But yeah, they don't. Yeah, like they don't care if it's like the same skin color or same race attacking the other.
Yeah, it
And
doesn't.
that's why outside of L.A. or California, like this shooting in OC isn't talked about.
Nope.
And also, like the body count isn't high enough.
Yeah, that's true. The races doesn't match the narrative. I mean, it's barely talked about on the new like local news now.
Mm-hmm.
That's how, and like definitely it's not a national news story.
No.
Uh,
Which I mean,
but
I think like shooting, like even the Buffalo one, it should have been just a local story, and like if the national news wanted to talk about it, it should have been like, oh, shooting in Buffalo, suspect taken into custody, such and such people dead, such and such people injured, and then moved on.
But no, that it's when it's a crazy racist white guy, which there's crazy racist white guys out there.
Yeah, we
It's
don't deny. Yeah, we don't deny the existence of crazy racist white guys.
Yeah, they exist. It's not. They're not like they're not the majority. Like where they're just running the country. No, that's not what's
Right. I
happening.
know. Yeah, it's like people still bring up the KKK like the KKK is like some really big thing.
The
It's
last
like
time the KKK was relevant was like back like when Woodrow Wilson was president.
yeah, I mean, and arguably like in the 70s.
Yo, with President Johnson.
Yeah.
uh,
But yeah, but that's like that was like the last time like in the 70s was like the last time the Klan like really had like political
even,
clout.
yeah, even then though, yeah, like that, and like even then, like it was on its last like vestige.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, last legs. I mean, even now, like probably in the entire country, there are probably maximum like 300 like KKK members.
I think like the reason why people still think of it as like a relevant thing, like they watch movies like Mississippi Burning, which came out in the
Or
80s.
even more recently, Black Klansman.
Yeah,
But again, that
uh,
movie was set in the 70s.
yeah, exactly. It's like, well, Mississippi Burning set in the like the 60s, like the 50s
Yeah,
or 60s.
exactly. Like, show me like a recent story dealing with the KKK. Except for
Well,
I know that there was a KKK rally in interestingly enough OC, and and uh, and the KKK guys got their shit kicked in by fucking Antifa.
that's hilarious. Actually, to be honest, that's hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, it's the old Democrat militant wing being kicked out by the new Democrat
Yeah,
militant wing.
it's Spider-Man kicking Spider-Man's ass. I mean, they're the
Yeah,
same people.
exactly. Yeah,
Uh,
it's that Spider-Man memes. Like, all you need is Black Lives Matter. It's like, there you go.
yeah. I mean, you could point to like a movie like American History X, but like that movie is not what people think it's about. It's not pro racism or showing like how awesome the Klan is. It's actually like it's the exact opposite message.
Right, and actually, like, it also what is it? It also reveals the hypocrisy of like of like this identity politics ideology stuff because like
Yeah,
when
it
he
shows.
when he's in prison, like the skinhead gang still does business with like the black gangs,
Yeah,
and it's like so what, and even in like prison, like what is it, like the other skinheads were like saying, we're telling the Ed Norton character is like, hey, you're a little tired of your your sermons.
yeah,
It's just like, this is the world that you're in now. This is prison, and in prison there is politics in prison, and like, and there are treaties made in prison. So like the skinhead Aryans will do business with the Mexicans,
yeah.
and the blacks, and the slopes, and yada yada yada, on and on and on. So like this whole idea of like, racial purity is like, stuff that Edward Norton's character was like, professing, like, outside of prison. Like, yeah, you can, he has a, it just reveals the folly of like that kind of, ideology, because it's like, no, because like everyone makes compromises.
Yeah, and it's it's fun, because we see like the black and white scenes, which are depicting the past,
Mm-hmm.
and like how it just like, and it's horrible. No one's like, yeah, I like what he's saying. Yeah, no one thinks that. It's like, oh god, it's really awful, and like, and yet when Edward Norton reemerges, it's like he's a whole new person. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's stupid. Like I was an idiot, and
Right, yeah, there's like that scene, like after he takes a shower, and like, he sees that swastika tattoo on his chest. Before, like, he had like such pride in it, but now like he sees it as like this, almost like scarlet letter. It's shameful for him.
he hates himself
Mm-hmm.
for like ever being associated with that.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's that movie, because everyone's like, "Oh man, it's about like racism and like how like it's pro racism." It's like, no, you obviously did not watch the
See,
movie.
I know. Yeah, it's like clearly we watched two different movies.
Yeah, it's maybe they only watched like the black and white scenes, because
I know,
some of those
right?
are
Yeah.
more memorable, especially that curb stomping scene.
Oh yeah,
Ooh,
the oh jeez.
God damn, that scene is so fucked up.
Yeah, it's so funny though because like the director, like he doesn't want anything to do with it.
Yeah, and it's like, no, man, you made like your movie was perfect. It
Although like what we got though is because Ed Norton like jumped in and like edited it and whatever. And I mean, despite the reputation that he has, like in this one case, he did a pretty good job.
There's a lot of times though where he has gone and done that and made movies better.
Mm-hmm.
He really is, like, he actually is very talented writing wise, and like he does have a good eye, and that guy gets such a bad reputation. Yes, is he difficult to work with? Yes, because he is a perfectionist.
Mm-hmm.
He does want, like, he's not there to like be in a bad movie. It's like,
Right.
hey, we have weaknesses here. We can make this better.
Mm-hmm.
And even like there's been times like where he's taken away like stuff from himself to give like hey, we need to be better in this section and this section. Let's rewrite this because the dialogue is not right, or like this character when this would not be the motivation of this character.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and a lot of times he's made movies better doing that, and it's pissed everyone off. But hey, we get great movies. It's like, so who wins in the long run?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, if you think even like his debut in film, Primal Fear, like, I mean, that's one of the best debut acting acting performances I've ever seen.
Yeah. No. I still have to watch that.
Dude, that movie. Whoo, God damn, that movie's good.
Yeah. No. I mean, yeah. I remember you telling me about it, particularly after we watched Witness for the Prosecution.
Yeah, you think that had a huge twist? Oh, wait till you see Primal Fear.
All
Holy
right, for
shit.
sure. Yeah. I'll definitely I'll definitely move it up my queue.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just the Klan's not a thing. Are there people that still hold those beliefs? Oh yeah, absolutely. I know, but then again, like I know racist Korean people. I know racist, black people. I know a lot of like people who like of different races. Like, yeah, even like everyone thinks of like Asians as this like monoliths. Like, no, they all hate each other. Like, Koreans don't like
Oh yeah,
Japanese
like this.
people.
Yeah, like this whole like this past month, like the whole like Asian American Pacific Islander like heritage crap.
It's
It's
not a
like
thing.
motherfucker, we hate each other.
Guess what, people? White people are not a monolith either. If you go to Europe, there's so many of those countries that fucking hate each other.
Yeah, like
Hungary
Lithuanians
hates
aren't the
everybody.
same as Lithuanians aren't the same as Belgians, or Germans aren't the same as Austrians, or and French people definitely aren't the same as like Spanish people, and like of course
Yeah,
and of course the English, they hate the French and vice
yeah.
versa.
Well, I mean, they fought like so many fucking wars
Yeah, what was it,
against
like
each
the 100 Years' War? They literally had a war called the 100 Years' War.
other. So don't and like and you have we're witnessing one right now where like, oh, the Russians and Ukrainians they're the same fucking thing. No, they fucking hate each other. It's like they're not. It's like all those Slavic people hate each other. The Hungarians and the Serbians and
The Estonians,
the Estonians. They all
the
fucking hate.
Belarusians, yeah, they all fucking hate each other.
And it's like,
Yeah,
I'm not.
Koreans hate Japs, Japs hate Koreans and Chinese.
Chinese hate
Chinese hates
everybody.
everybody. Koreans hate, Chinese and Japs.
You
Japs
should
for
hear my
good reasons. Japs
my
for
wife
good
hates.
reasons though.
Yeah,
They raped our grandmothers.
yeah. My wife hates Chinese people. It's like I wouldn't go that far. I hate the Chinese Communist government. I think there's a lot of people that are trapped there that.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Let's not. I mean, but also like their people are kind of trash. Have you seen like there's like videos of like Chinese people in like their version of like Rodeo Drive just on the street taking a shit.
Yep.
Yeah, so you wonder why like Koreans and like Japanese like have like bad opinions on them. And I mean, again, that just and it goes the other way too with Chinese people having bad opinions about Koreans and Japanese people.
Yeah.
We all hate each other, and like I hate it's really annoying like this push like this past month with like Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month or whatever. It's
Oh God.
it's like how are you gonna lump like all it's like the worst form of racism like to lump like all of these people with like these similar characteristics and like, oh yeah, you guys are all the same.
Yeah, I'm not even Asian. I'm like, dude, you're no. It's just not. It's not real.
Yeah, again, we hate each other, all right, and stop trying to take away our hate, and just like and like I mean I don't mean to dump on my people, but like like you're just talking about like racist Koreans, dude. Like the way we describe black people is like in our language it's called we call them dirt people.
Yeah, I know. It's like I was like, because I mean I know enough Korean to like get by. I was like, holy shit. I was like, oh,
Yeah,
I
I know exactly.
like,
we refer to in Korean we refer to black people as dirt people.
I nearly like I remember like one of my friend's moms who she's her English is not good, so like she mainly like speaks in like Korean.
Mm-hmm.
And she said that one day. I nearly did a spit take. I was like, Jesus. But yeah, it's and black people don't like Asians either. Like it's just this like no, it's not like that's not true completely. Like that's not it's not like this group of races they all hate like they all hate them. It's like no, it's just the majority. They're it's just that's just the reality. There are people who don't care about that stuff, and and obviously like the world is better with people like that in it who don't care about that don't care about that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is that there's a lot of people that do care about that stuff. Where like countries and nationality that's actually an important thing to them.
Mm-hmm.
What right, wrong, or indifferent, that is something that is important to people. And when you lump people into this monolith, it's not good. It's not, and it's not real.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like how they kind of like the same with like black people. They put all Hispanic people in this monolith. But again, Guatemalans hate Mexicans. Mexicans hate Salvadorians. Salvadorians
Yeah,
hate and on and on and on and on. Like they all
yeah. Like I had one of my friends. He's from El Salvador. And I remember somebody asked me, I was like, dude, what are you going to do for Cinco de Mayo? I was like, I'm not fucking Mexican.
Yeah, exactly.
Fuck those people. It's like, I was like, for me, it's like, I knew that. I was like, and I knew what this person was going to ask. Like, oh, don't ask it. Don't ask it. It's like, and it's just like, oh man. Or I would love to like see if like someone like from Spain was asked that. It's like, oh, what are you going to do for Cinco de Mayo? I was like, I'm from Spain. Like I'm
Motherfucker, I'm from
European.
Spain.
Like
Yeah, I'm European.
those people are dirt people.
Yeah.
They rip out people's hearts. Like I don't give a shit.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, well, one time I accidentally, I I thought, I similar situation to you, but like I said that to a Honduran person. It's like, motherfucker, don't you ever, equate me to a Mexican ever again. And I was just like, my bad.
Yeah. And and see, it was this is actually one of like the benefits that I've had because I've never actually been in like a quote unquote white community or anything like that. I've always been around a lot of different races, and so it's just like I just pick things up, like not from like asking a lot of questions. It's just like, oh, I just listen.
Yeah, you just pick up some things.
Yeah, and it's like, oh well, and obviously like when they say, oh yeah, I'm my parents were from like El Salvador or from like Honduras or Brazil. It's like actually I had and so yeah, it's just like, oh, so yeah, there's obviously like a lot of differences between those countries, and it's like, yeah, their cultures are different. So when it's like, oh yeah, like, oh, he's just a Mexican, it's like, not from Mexico. Has no, not, yes. Do they have like Latin heritage? Sure. It all, they all descend from like Spaniards. Sure, and Spaniards and like the indigenous people of that area. Sure, but like they're not the same culture. It's
exactly. Yeah, like Mexican Spanish isn't the same as Peruvian Spanish or Argentinian Spanish or
it's very
Chilean
different.
Spanish. It's all different.
Well, it's funny because I one of my favorite shows is The Walking Dead, and they had one of their spin-offs was Fear the Walking Dead, which is also very good. I highly recommend it. And one of the actresses, she's Cuban, but like she's playing a character that's from Mexico, and it's like, yeah, it was actually really hard because I'm used to Cuban Spanish, which is actually very different from Mexican Spanish, and so it's like she had a huge learning curve to try to like learn a lot of like the differences, and it's I wouldn't be able to really tell many of those differences just because I'm not familiar with the language, but like it's like it's a real thing. I kind of equate this, when I was learning Hebrew for, in school. I also took Aramaic. And Aramaic, although it uses, the same characters and everything, and like the word, like it sounds the same. The grammar and the rules completely different, and you can tell. Oh, I'm looking at I'm looking at You can tell when you're looking at Aramaic versus Hebrew.
Right. Yeah, I mean it's just like the same with like British English and American English.
Oh, completely different.
They like different. They'll use like different vocabulary, like and, again, I mean other than like the accent, but
yeah, they smoke bags and take a lift.
Yeah, elevator versus lift. Wrench versus spanner. Mile versus kilometer.
About the yeah, that's right.
And there's your Simpsons reference for the stream.
They use stupid U's in their words. It's
oh yeah, like color and favorite.
Yeah.
What the fuck is wrong with those people?
Exactly. Well, that's why we chucked their tea into the harbor and told them to beat it.
Yeah. But yeah. And yeah, like even Native Americans, they had beef with each other, to the point where like the name, like this isn't for all, but at least for two I know for sure, are just words for enemy.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Comanche and Apache. Those are just words like in the Native American language for enemy.
Two of the most evil tribes.
Yeah.
known. They were.
I mean, and even like a little bit like, and even I mean, it's not direct, but I looked it up, and like Cherokee just means like different language, which might as well be enemy.
Yeah, it's when a lot of people like look, when they look the old, oh man, they're like they watch old Western movies, like, man, these people, the white people, are so terrible to the Indians. It's like, yeah, well, you know what? Who they're like? It's you look at like, oh, they're fighting the Apache or the Comanche, or what? I forget which tribe was in the Revenant, and it's like, yeah, all those tribes were horrible.
Yeah, like they have like this idea in their head that that Native Americans were like hip, weed smoking hippies, and they all got along with each other. It's like, no, they're fucking brutal to each other. They're constantly at war with one another. They're constantly taking like each other as slaves.
Yeah, it's like, even like, did we do some bad things? Okay, yeah, I'll grant that. But yeah, they also did it to us. So it's not like it's a two-way street.
Exactly.
And
we broke treaties with them. They broke treaties with us.
We just did
circle of life shit.
And we just did it better than they did.
Yeah, we just had, what was it? Like in the game of empires, America was just really good at it.
Yeah. But, yeah, it's just this is what happens like when you create this narrative that the media creates this narrative, and it really is meant to divide us in a
Oh
lot of
yeah,
ways.
yeah, absolutely.
We already have dividing lines. We already there's already lots of barriers. I mean, it's
Hmm.
been throughout history. There's always been those dividing lines, but never to the point like where it's just been like absolutely like it's almost statecraft, creating more and more division, not only across like national and like skin color lines, but like it's even now down to like our political leanings, uh, where there's actually it's actually causing riots and you know just absolute insanity.
Yeah. What is it? I don't. Yeah. I like. I didn't care that the government said like that I had to associate with other people, but it's like it I would have a problem if they made a law that I could only associate with people that look like me.
Yeah, it's like why?
Because again, like then because what is it? It everything should be on a voluntary basis. And I mean, if you, cause I was doing a lot of thinking about this, and particularly about like the whole like integration thing. But I'm not saying that it shouldn't have happened, but I'm just kind of thinking about like kind of the unintended consequences of the whole thing, and I haven't like really been able to look it up. But I was just thinking about integration and how like how it really was like a huge detriment to the black community because it ultimately integration ultimately shut down black schools because because you can say you can think about like black students allowed to go to white schools, but did the integration go to the apply to the teachers as well? I don't think it did.
No, I don't think that's something, that's a good question. I don't think it did. I don't because there's nothing really like that I can think of in that like those laws that were like put in place that talked about that. Obviously the students
Right.
that was a big thing, like Brown versus the Board of Education and
Hmm.
all those like subsequent integration laws.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's a great question. I don't think it stopped people from like having like a black teacher or whatever in a white school, but how many of those schools were actually hiring those teachers?
Exactly, and like because of the integration, it shut down like those black schools, which then you know essentially took those jobs away from those black teachers. And so like it was just not, maybe it was an unintended consequence, or maybe it was part of the plan to destabilize the black community. Like if you didn't have people working, then they couldn't afford to support themselves.
Yeah, you don't really think about that. It's funny. I would have never thought about that.
Yeah, no, it was just like interesting. I think it was like one of like a shower thought that I was having.
Yeah, yeah.
While in the shower, I was just like thinking about integration.
Why is it that we always seem to have like what is it about the shower that causes like these thoughts? Like where like because I feel like I always feel smart. I almost feel smarter in the shower.
well, maybe it's like also like the resonant like kind of chamber effect, because everyone like the effect like, oh, everyone sounds better when they're singing in the shower. Maybe
Yeah,
something similar happens when like the water hits like the shower, and like the sound vibration is it puts you in a higher state of consciousness, and so like you're able to like be able to access or piece things together better in the shower. So it's
Yeah.
like more meditative
Yeah.
state. Which and I don't know a lot of people. It's funny because a lot of people think like meditation means like you empty your mind, which that can happen. But if you think about what meditation means, it means to like think about things.
You're focusing your
Yeah, you're focusing your mind. So yeah, like you're like it doesn't mean like you blank your mind. You focus your mind on something, and so
maybe that's why like in like all those like great martial art movies like where you have like the guy like meditating in the like the waterfall.
exactly.
That you know what, that makes sense.
Exactly.
I think there's something there.
Yeah, there's something to it. Yeah.
But yeah, you are the only one that I have heard even like think about that.
I know. Yeah, because I was really thinking like has anyone like ever really like brought this up, and you know I and I really haven't like looked into it very deeply, but to my knowledge, like no one has ever like brought up this question. Like
Yeah.
what happened to the black teachers? So we all know, yeah, because we all know that the black students, they got to attend the white schools, but did the white schools also absorb some of the black teachers?
Yeah.
To my knowledge, I don't think they have. I mean, again, I haven't looked very deep into this, but if I looked into it and I found like no school absorbed any of the black teachers, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I mean it makes a lot of sense. And it's almost like the other thing I want to think about too is since we're talking about it is now obviously like the resources and the funding were much less for like a lot of these like black schools,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't necessarily mean that the education was worse.
Right.
uh and it makes me wonder is like what would it be like, or what would it to go into one of those schools, like I almost wonder like what was it a day like, what were they learning,
Mm-hmm.
because nowadays we look at like the public school system, it's garbage. It's
Yeah, that's utter garbage.
um and that's just it's a byproduct of a lot of like bad policies and throwing money at bad money, and also
Yeah, throwing
having,
good after bad. Yeah.
yeah, but it's also due to like teacher unions and stuff like that. But
Oh.
back in those days that was not a thing.
Mhm.
So at least especially at least I don't think it was happening in the black schools. So I think that they may have been more free to actually teach kind of like what we would expect a school to teach.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and I'm not saying that like segregation is good, or I'm not calling for that. This is just more of a thought exercise of
Mm-hmm.
like what was it like,
Yeah.
what were they
Oh,
learning.
yeah. What sparked this line of meditation for me was something that I heard Owen Benjamin say on one of his streams, and he was talking about how you really have to rethink how you look at history because like something about like baseball came up and Jackie Robinson, and he was saying that
He wasn't even the best Negro leaguer. He was good, but he wasn't the best.
right, but like one of the reasons why they actually brought him in was, or why they integrated baseball was because actually the Negro leagues, they were actually doing better in terms of like attendance than like the white major leagues.
Dude, they were killing it, man. Like their baseball was really freaking good. And because baseball was having a little bit of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
We had because a couple of things that were going on. We had the 1919 Black Sox scandal, which really hurt baseball a lot. A lot of people like were getting fed up with the games. Like, oh, all these games are fixed. We're tired of the mob, playing a part of it, and that's where we get like the first commissioner in baseball, and then thank God we got someone like Babe Ruth to come in and really he really energized the game. That era of Yankees baseball was just something to see.
Right.
But then you got the Depression. So the baseball was still very popular, but it was a little bit harder. And then once World War II hit, you had a lot of the big stars. They went off to war. Some didn't come back due to injury or death. But then there was a lot of the stars that did come back, but there was a bunch of years where baseball was not that good. And so that's where you got the idea of hey, the Negro Leagues though, they're doing really well, and why don't we see about we should just end this stupid thing and of why we can't have black players in baseball. It wasn't a law. There was nothing saying that they couldn't do it. It was just kind of this unwritten code.
Right. It was more of a cultural thing.
Yeah, because even going back to the turn of the 20th century, the manager of the New York Giants, oh God, what's his name? I'm drawing a blank on his name, but he hated he always hated the fact that he couldn't have black players on the team. It's he had a roster. It's I could get these guys on our team, and we would win the World Series every freaking year. And he hated the fact that it's because of this stupid code, and he didn't. Yeah, I mean, he wasn't an owner or anything. It's I can't do anything about this. It's but I want these guys, and I could get them. And we would be unstoppable. And he was right. They would have been unstoppable. They probably the Giant had that been allowed to happen, the Giants would have won probably as many championships as the Yankees.
Right. But yeah, that's what got me down this line of questioning about the school integration things, because Owen Benjamin brought up the point. It's you think this, they did this for they brought in Jackie Robinson, to MLB because for equality and to make a stand or whatever. No, it was purely about numbers. It was purely about money. And
yeah,
the Negro Leagues were destroying the MLB, and so they needed a way to generate excitement and money, and so
as good as the movie 42 was, let's not think of the general manager of the Dodgers as some saint. It was all about I want a player that's going to make us better, and it's I can get somebody from the Negro Leagues, going to be better. He's going to really electrify the game, or electrify our team. And that's what it was all about. It wasn't about oh, we're going to break the color barrier, and this is stupid. It's no, that had nothing to do with it. But he was smart in the sense of who he chose, because he knew whoever was going to break that barrier, they needed to he needed someone that was tough, and Jackie Robinson was that guy. And so there is there was some intelligence in it, and of how and who was chosen to do it, but that doesn't mean that it was some this kumbaya
right. It wasn't for exclusively noble reasons.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't.
So yeah, that's what got me to my line of questioning about integration.
But yeah, no, I think you're right. I don't there's it was all about integrating students. I don't think there was anything about integrating teachers.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, and even you really start you really have to start questioning everything. Even the whole suffrage movement for women. It's like, well, that's just a way to split the family, because like before it was like one family, one vote, but now like the woman has a say, and so now you have a family divided. It's like if you had like a Republican husband and a Democrat wife, and then vice versa.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
Yeah, and then even like women going to work, that is just another way to expand the tax base.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, so like I mean, people really should like question these things.
Well, at the time they did. That's like where like women's like, I don't know if I want.
Right, exactly. Like the responsibility of voting, like that. People now, of course, nowadays people take voting for granted, but if you understood like the responsibility of it, like you wouldn't want it either. And partly one of the reasons why women didn't want the vote either is because they were afraid that they're going to be drafted into the military, because that's the way that all men got the franchise, is that we had to submit ourselves to the government if the government said that they needed our bodies.
Yeah.
Because I remember I was talking to this girl, and I don't know how voting came up, but I was like, well, yeah, the only you got it for nothing. You weren't even in the process of getting your right to vote. Like a man had to give that to you.
Yeah. Which people forget.
Yeah, which people forget. Which people also forget about the Roe v. Wade thing. Nine men decided to give women the right to kill their babies.
Yep.
Let's think like this whole like, oh, if you don't have a uterus, you don't get an opinion. It's like, well, 9 guys without uteruses decided that you could do this.
Now you don't
know. Should we not consider their opinions?
Yeah, you don't know they didn't have uteruses, Andy. Come on.
I know. My bigotry is showing. But
it just and that's what I do like these like interesting thought exercises though, because it pisses people off and it's scary. Gee, no, that's not. We can't think like that. It's like, this is exactly what we're supposed to do. And think about it too. Had these teachers from these black schools been integrated, we might have gotten like a more correct version of history itself. Like, we're not just where we're vilifying like everything that happened back in the past. Like, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of bad that happened in the past, but like there's a lot of good things that were done. We might actually learn something about like what guys like Frederick Douglass stood for. That like maybe like
Frederick Douglass, a Republican.
Yeah, who is pretty much like forgotten to history now because of the way that school's taught.
Yeah.
Because he's not convenient. And they also kind of like change around, like they romanticize Harriet Tubman and everything. Like, not that she didn't do great things, but it's just like there's more to that story than just like the Underground Railroad. There's a whole lot going on there. Who, if we are to be correct, she also wasn't doing it alone.
It's not like she started the organization or whatever. She escaped her freedom, and then because she was now able to enjoy the the fruits of freedom. Like she wanted to like help others, and so it was like
and joined with
it's not
to help like free slaves.
Exactly, and she's not like she came up with like the routes and like set up all of like the safe houses and whatever. Came up with the system. Like the system was already in place.
Yeah. So I mean, there's that, and there's nothing that doesn't take away from what Harriet Tubman did. Like, she's still an incredible person. That's not it, but see, that's the thing. It's like we're teaching a more, God, I hate using this word, but I have to use it.
It's applicable. It's applicable.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, it's a better view because it's the reality. That like there we might have gone to like, hey, there's these things that were happening from like the North and the South, we might have gotten a more accurate view of what was actually going on. Not only like, oh, the North good, South bad, and like that's it. Like we've listened to audio recordings of actual former slaves, saying it's like, like, yeah, things were not really, where I was at, you know, did I want to be a slave? No. Were things like all that bad? No. But I never want to go back.
Right. I mean, yeah, like even like think about it, like the whole idea of like, getting scraps from the master's table. It's like, how does that track? Because like, if you are a slave owner, like let's think of it back to like animals. Like if you want your ox to be strong, do you give it just like the bare minimum like sustenance?
No.
No, exactly. You give them the best that you possibly can, and you feed them like to you feed them enough so that that they don't like die of starvation, and so similarly with people slaves. It's like you won't be able to get like a good day's work out of them if your slave is starving or malnourished.
Yeah.
So like, because I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm sure like they that they did do this, like like the whole idea of like barbecue coming from like slaves because all they got were like the scraps from the master's table or whatever.
Oh, I'm sure there were some places that were like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
No.
yeah. Don't get me wrong, but then yeah, let's not be foolish in thinking like that that these slaves picked like 1,000 bales of cotton in one day off the scraps from the master's table.
Exactly. Well, and the other thing too, is that not only we found out too, like because we also listened to a Confederate soldier, him talking about it's like, yeah, we didn't. I mean, yeah, we fought for. I fought, like the guy that we listened to. He fought for the South. It's like,
Mhm.
yeah, it wasn't. We didn't own slaves. Like
Yeah,
we.
he was like the night. Interestingly, the words that they used, like, he was probably the 99% that didn't own slaves. Because again, the people, the it was like the 1% in the South that owned slaves.
Yeah, they didn't own slaves. It's like, and he's like, yeah, I didn't think black people were inferior. In fact, like some of them fought beside me. It's like, and so
Right, exactly. Again, like kind of like that alternative history. There were black soldiers fighting for the South.
yeah, and so you have that. You have and even like the whole idea of that that black people were inferior and like all that didn't even come about until Lincoln was talking about ending slavery. That's like when people started to justify like, oh well, they're not actually people, and they were utilizing the Bible to like kind of keep kind of create that mythos.
Mhm.
But that was never like the idea. Like even like when when the Atlantic slave trade started, like it's like no, it's like we're gonna take these people and we're gonna enslave them, just like how it had been done throughout history, pretty much. That and it still goes on in the Arabic slave trade, which is still happening to this day.
Mhm.
It's it
Yeah, AKA Libya.
these are the descendants of the same people that enacted this. So it's just that's been going on forever. Is it bad? Absolutely. Of course it's bad. But the idea of like oh these black people they're inferior that didn't come until like way later. That didn't come
Right.
until like almost the end of slavery.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah. Oh, just what is it? Like the three fifths compromise. Everyone thinks that they were saying like oh black people will only count as 3/5 of a person. It's like, but that's not the case at all.
That
And
was
it,
a way to keep the like
that was a
the
way to keep the South from gaining power in the Congress.
talk about like how like that we would have been utilizing slavery for a much longer time had that not happened had we not done that.
Yeah, exactly. That was, and yeah, interesting enough, like the 3/5 compromise that was proposed by abolitionists.
I look at what's going to happen. I'm venturing hundreds of years into the future, long after you and I are dead.
Mm-hmm.
But here's what's going to happen, because the way that people incorrectly look at the 3/5 compromise,
Mm-hmm.
that's how they're going to look at like this potential elimination of Roe versus Wade. It's like, what the fuck were you guys thinking? Like, why didn't you just eliminate it right then? Like, and they're going to look back at the people who did that as like, what, you didn't think that babies were people? What, are you insane? It's like, it kind of like that's the way that we look at the 3/5 compromise. Is like,
Mm-hmm.
no, it was not ideal. Obviously, nobody wanted slavery. The majority of the Union did not want it. Even the
Yeah,
people
even the people in the South. Yeah.
even the people that owned slaves, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, those people didn't want it either. But because they knew that if they did not have some of the southern states that were pro-slavery, that they would never succeed. And so they made a compromise.
Right.
And
Exactly. Because everyone wants to paint Jefferson as like this horrible slave owner. It's like, but a man who wrote the Declaration of Independence, and using the words that he did, like all men being equal. You can't have that and then have like this sadistic slave owner.
no, he wasn't. And here's how you can tell. Not only look at the early drafts of the Constitution, which are available to look at, before, like, the one that we looked to, that's the final draft. But there were early drafts that are available that we can still view today.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also look at the letters that he wrote about this stuff, and he is. I encourage you to read his stuff. Read what the man wrote. He's not some, like, crazy, slaver who hated black people or whatever. No, he hated slavery. It was just like with Washington, it was thrust upon him. Now, did they do all the right things? No, but they're not horrible people. It's more
Right.
of like, it was a practice that was thrust upon them before they were born, and they were trying to uh, exercise it from the country, but like they weren't able to do it within their time, within the system that they created.
Right.
But
They created the system and entrusted that responsibility to the preceding generations or
exactly,
succeeding generations. I'm sorry,
just
succeeding
like,
generations.
we it took 50 years to get to where we're at now, where we've had people making maneuvers to eliminate this bad, Supreme Court decision that
Mm-hmm.
has cost the lives of millions of children.
Yeah, I think like 62 million.
Yeah, to roughly around that number.
Mm-hmm.
And we are now at a point where we've utilized the system in place to, like, hey, we're at we've made these gains, and now we're ready to, like, make a big, have kind of a starting victory. We're going to eliminate this bad decision. Great, that's a great start, but that's not the end game. We're now, it's that doesn't mean that abortion is just gone. And it just means that now states have it goes back to the states, and the states themselves now have a decision to make. Are we going to be pro-abortion? Well, certainly California, New York, and some of these other places are going to do that. But there's other states,
Regrettably.
yeah, there's other states where it's like, we're done with this. Where it's
Yeah,
like,
and there's like some states that have trigger laws in place. So as soon as Roe v. Wade goes down, it's like boom, end of
I
abortion
think
in that
I,
state.
yeah, I think Oklahoma is definitely one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a few that I think are going to follow their suit.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I don't know about some of the other states that have, like, already kind of come up with these heartbeat bills.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll stick to that probably for a little bit, but
Yeah.
and you know what? That's a great start. I
Mm-hmm.
would like to more states to be more like Oklahoma. It's like, well, fuck that. We're done with it.
Mm-hmm.
We're no money, no state money.
No public money will go to the ending of children's lives.
Good on them.
Yes. So yeah, so really take time and like rethink some of these things. Yeah. Yeah, like the 3/5 one, that's like really huge.
Dude, so many people like, oh, you think the black person is 3/5 of a person? No, you fucking idiot. That's not what it was about.
3/5 was like, it was like it was counting 3/5 of the total population of slaves. You know, because what is it? Because all of the Southern representatives, they wanted to include slaves in their total population so that they could have more representation in the Congress, so that they can make laws more in their favor.
Exactly, and the majority of the like, fuck no, we're not doing that. Nope.
Yeah, and so again, like for the sake of peace, if you want to, you might say, for the sake of peace, they came up with 3/5. It's like, okay, fine, we'll count 3/5 of the slaves, you know, in your territories. Well, you know, but we won't count all of them.
If you think about it, had that not been in place, right?
Mm-hmm.
What would have stopped, Southern, like the slave owners just like going ape shit and like getting as many slaves as possible, and
to inflate their numbers.
That would have pushed the country back, the development of to where we're at now, 100 years, maybe.
Right. I mean, think about from let's say like from the founding, 1776, to
1865.
Wait, when was a cotton gin invented?
That was done like what? That was like 1840 or 50 or something like that. Maybe earlier.
Let's see.
It's a good question. I used to know this.
Well, it says the patent was in 1794. But when was it first like made?
It wasn't validated until 1806. Because the patent was granted in 1794, was not validated until 1807, and it wasn't really put into place up until about like just before the Civil War. So like
right, yeah, no, yeah, okay, yeah. So yeah, if you think about it that way, like that's how much slavery, held back progress. Because there like the patent for the cotton gin was first issued in 1794, but like the first like practical one wasn't until like around the time of the Civil War, like in 1863.
it's it's in that era. It's like, but had they just said like when it was like, well, I can just make this machine that's gonna do the work of all these people. Well, why do I have all these people that I have to feed and clothe and and do all this stuff? Like fuck that. I'm gonna use this machine that's gonna cost me way less.
Exactly, and I can hire like one person to run.
Yeah.
So that's like so imagine if like that kind of stifling like still happened, like if the southern representatives had their way and like they were able to count all of their slaves.
Well, and we see like what would part So we had, you know, the end of the Civil War. We had the Emancipation Proclamation that went into effect in the whole country. But as we were expanding more westward, uh, you know, the Indians, obviously they had their territories. I think were starting to become like the reservations were becoming a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? They still had slaves, and they didn't end slavery until, God. Well, it was much later. It was like closer to like 10 or 15 years later.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what, you know. And who knows, had the Three-Fifths Compromise not been a thing, the southern states would have pushed like, hey, well, we're just going to buy more, or you know, or have you know, slaves procreate more,
Yeah.
so that we have
Or who
more
knows?
people.
They would have sent like agents into the north to recover like freed slaves.
Yeah, it would have been worse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would have been a huge disaster, to be honest.
Oh
But
yeah.
like, because we had that piece that compromise in place, it was a disincentive,
Mm-hmm.
and it really was the start of the end of slavery right then, right at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody wants to think about that, because, oh, it's not the right narrative.
Absolutely.
And that's why, like, when people make that argument, it's like, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. That's not what that was about at all. But and maybe it's not their fault either, because that's what these weird commie teachers are teaching them.
Well, yeah, because they have to create a new narrative, and like it's like, oh no, America wasn't founded in 1776, it was 1619.
Yeah,
Because with the first slaves, how does that make sense? It's like,
America wasn't.
so then when was Britain founded? Like when like they had their first slaves?
Yeah,
Or what about like India? Like was like the whole the Raj system was like, is it because when they founded like their first slaves? Or Russia, like when they had their first slaves, or in Japan, like when they had their first slaves, and on and on and on, and like the Roman Empire, like when they first had their slaves.
the Egyptians. Yeah,
Yeah, like when they got when they was it founded like when they enslaved the Hebrews.
exactly. Dumb, fucking stupid. But yeah, that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, yeah, me too.
Interesting thought exercise. I'm glad you brought that up. That's a really interesting thought.
Yeah, it's just like it's like one of those like obvious things, but like no one ever like touches upon.
I wouldn't even thought about that. Like, because you don't think about it.
Yeah, no, yeah, because again, you're like, oh yeah, like the black kids, they got to go to the white schools, but it's like, but what about the teachers in the black schools?
Yeah, and like, did the white kids go to the black schools? No.
No, yeah, like a lot of times it was like they built like I don't know if they built new schools.
Did the white teachers go to the black schools? No.
No, yeah, like or did the white students like go into like the black schools?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I don't think that happened.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean,
Did they?
the only story that I know, like, well, at least of like integration, like what was it? Remember the Titans? When you had like the white school and the black school, like they merged together. But and then they brought like like you know the lone like black football coach.
Yeah.
But like I don't think like I remember at least in the movie them talking about like black teachers.
No. No. Nope.
Yeah, I mean if I'm wrong, then I'll fully admit that I was wrong.
Yeah,
And like
we're not making a declaration. It's just more. It's a question. Like, did this actually happen? Like, we're just making the assumption that it's like it probably did not.
mhm.
But that doesn't mean that we're right. We're just thinking, like, just based off of what we understand of history and like the narratives that are prevalent, we would say that probably did not happen.
Exactly. Yeah. So like, yeah, I'll try to look into the matter myself, but
Yeah. And if
if I
anyone has knowledge of that, like, please let us know. I'd be very curious to hear that if that was also part of this.
mhm. All right. Yeah, I guess that brings us to the end of our topics. So let's get into our movie review, and we could wrap things up.
Yeah, you give the synopsis. I'll be right back.
All right, will do. I will hit everyone up with the synopsis, and we'll get going. Just to remind you, folks, tonight's movie review is Unbreakable, starring Bruce Willis, of course, along with Samuel L. Jackson and Robin Wright. Directed by M. Night Shyamalan, released in 2000. Wow, this movie's 22 years old. Incredible. Um, yeah, let me hit you guys with the synopsis. A security guard, having been the sole survivor of a high fatality train crash, finds himself at the center of a mysterious theory that explains his consistent physical good fortune. The news of his survival is made public. A man whose own body is excessively weak tracks him down in an attempt to explain his unique, unbreakable nature.
Oh man, this is our first M Night Shyamalan film, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So he actually, from what I dug up, he had done a couple of movies before this.
Mhm.
First one he did was kind of like more of a independent film back in like I think like '92, and it stars and is directed and written by him. I haven't seen it. There's a movie that he did, I think in like '95, that stars Rosie O'Donnell of all people. I don't know how good that is. I've never seen it. And then the movie that I thought was actually his debut, which is not, is The Sixth Sense, and that's where he really just blew up. Really, and we almost did that film, but which also stars Bruce Willis. Um, and that movie just really took off, and M. Night Shyamalan really had this like he had about like a 4 or 5 movie run where it's just like his he couldn't do any wrong. He had The Sixth Sense. He had Unbreakable. He had Signs, The Village, and to a lesser extent, Lady in the Water.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then at, and then and then it just like that was a little bit less well received.
Yeah,
But
I
then
think Lady in the Water is when his like the shininess of like M Night Shyamalan started to come away.
yeah, because then right after that he did the it was gonna be the Avatar the Airbender
Mm-hmm.
movie, which, as we know, many of these animated movies that
Yeah,
become like
adaptations of.
are fucking terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And from what, because I know people that were involved in the production of that movie, one of the big problems was there was too much production company involvement, where like it's like too many hands in the cookie pot. Um,
Right.
and the cookie jar, and that always tends to lead to a terrible film.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there was thing, and M Night Shyamalan doesn't really seem like the type of guy. This doesn't seem like something that like is up his wheelhouse, and it was
Mm-hmm.
awful. That movie was god awful. It was barely a movie, if at best, and it did terrible. And he just kind of like he did that. He did After Earth with Will Smith, which was awful, and
Yeah.
kind of really fell off the map for a
Mm-hmm.
little while.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think let me look back at uh, his filmography again because he let's see here because right after that, he did. Oh, there was Happening too. I never heard or seen that. I don't know how well that did.
Oh yeah, that was his first rated R venture. Just because of all like the depictions of the gory depictions of death.
Yeah, I've never seen it.
But again, that wasn't very well received either.
Yeah, The Visit. I've never seen that either. And it's just like, and then I was like, well, then he hit us with. He kind of went back to basics. He kind of came back. Well, we didn't know he was kind of coming back to the movie we're talking about today. But it is a continuation off of Unbreakable, which was Split, which is one of the greatest acting performances I've ever seen.
From James McAvoy.
James McAvoy was brilliant in that, and we also got one of the early movies of this really great up and coming actress, Anya Taylor-Joy, who we're starting to see in a bunch of films now. She's great.
Oh yeah, she was in that Netflix show, Queen's Gambit.
Yeah. So yeah, she's been in a lot of stuff recently.
Oh yeah, and she's in the Northman.
The Northman, yeah, she's good in that. And then after Split, we got the conclusion of the Unbreakable trilogy, which is Glass. And then he just came out with Old. I have not seen it yet.
Oh, yeah.
Heard mixed things. And then
Same here.
He's doing a film that's coming out next year called Knock at the Cabin. So he's had some hits and misses. This part of like him at his peak of like, oh wow, M. Night Shyamalan, like that's the Sixth Sense guy. This is gonna be great. And I agree. I think this movie it's not for everybody because this movie does move at a very slow pace. But I think it's done deliberately so. It's not just because like, oh, we're just gonna take our time. I think he's wanting. I think this was always meant to be more than just one movie, and this is kind of like the very beginning, like the origin of
right. Yeah, it's like I mean, kind of. I think he did have in mind a set trilogy, and kind of following like the 3-act structure. Kind of like the best trilogies always kind of follow this same formula. But
yeah, and the what I like about this, it doesn't hide the fact that this is a comic book movie. It
fully embraces.
So
its identity as a comic book movie.
Yeah, so right away it's a comic book movie, and the idea is you have our main character played by Bruce Willis. David Dunn is his name, and he's just kind of this ordinary guy who has. Actually, I'm sorry. Let's go back. We actually start back in the past with Samuel L. Jackson's character, Elijah. It's his birth, and when he's born, like he's just born. His mom is holding him in her arms, and the doctor comes in. It's at a department store, and the doctor comes in. It's like, did you guys drop the baby? No. What the Jesus Christ? No. And it's like, did you? And he looks at the mom. Did you drop him? No. It's like, is he supposed to be crying this much? It's like, well, both his arms and legs are broken, and it's just like, and that's kind of like we get that little snippet. It's like, oh Jesus, okay, that's shocking. Right. And then it gets to our main character. It goes back to like present time with David Dunn, and he is on a train, and
we see I think we're meant to understand like this is him like at like a really low point in his life.
Oh yeah, you can tell like there's you don't know what's wrong.
Yeah, but there are like signs like he's older, like he's balding. He has like kind of like a cheap suit.
Yeah, and fairly attractive woman sits next to him, and he's like, oh, okay, and he takes off his
Yeah.
watching,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, there's definitely something going on here.
Mm-hmm.
He's either like a real lecherous
Yeah.
jackass, or he's just he's having like there's other problems in his marriage where it's like
Mm-hmm.
he's
Yeah.
doing,
Either he's a philanderer or like his marriage isn't the best.
yeah.
Um,
So yeah, so he ends up talking to this woman. She doesn't really end up being important in any way.
mm,
She's just a young. She's a sports agent for one of like the local talents, like from in
yeah,
town,
like an up and comer.
and so we get that, and then obviously like there's this mix up where like he's hitting on her. It's like, oh yeah, I'm married. It's like, oh great. It's like
Yeah.
and
And
so yeah,
yeah, it's really interesting because and we're seeing this, we're seeing this from this perspective of this little girl, like who's sitting like in front of him.
one thing to note about this movie too, the camera angles that M. Night Shyamalan chooses are really interesting because we get this like kind of great like, and throughout the Unbreakable series, he
Mm,
does kind of like the viewpoints like kind of like where it's you're the little girl kind of like moving in between like the cracks in the seat.
mm-hmm.
So like to look at the different the two
Yeah,
people.
like look at the girl, then look at Bruce Willis, and then back to the girl.
Yeah, there's also a ton of like there are tons of tracking shots in this movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I thought, and to be honest, I thought it was brilliantly done. Like I thought the camera work, and like all the camera angles used in this movie it was so well done, and kind of
And
and
even the composition of the shots too. If you really look at it, it looked very much like a comic book.
yeah, that's and I think that's what he was going for.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, I think he inspired a lot of like these current comic book movies. They're doing a lot of the same things. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, this happened in Unbreakable already. Like
Mm-hmm.
so this definitely inspired a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
that you can make a comic book movie and not have it be ridiculous.
Right.
Um, so yeah, so we get that interaction at the beginning of the movie, and then we start. He's like, and he just leans up against the glass. He's just defeated, and you
Right.
just feel that defeat on his face. And then all of a sudden, the train, something's not right, and he kind of like, what the heck's going on?
Yeah, there's like a rumbling and like, but it definitely, but it cuts away from like the actual destruction.
Yeah,
Um,
we don't know what happens, and all of a sudden, and then another really it just great camera work again, where you have this upside down angle at a TV, and we find David's son. He's just kind of like sitting on the couch upside down, like watching TV because like he's just fucking around, and he's clicking through different channels, and all of a sudden like he as he's channel surfing, he hits the news, and he just sees this giant train wreck. It's like we as the audience like, oh shit, the train derailed and like crashed.
right, and like yeah, and like what is it? His son like slowly kind of like pieces it together because like there's a train accident, and then like you see like the train number that's like being like during the on the lower third as it's like scrolling on the TV, and then he goes and checks the little post, like he checks the calendar of like when his dad's supposed to come home. It's the same number, and then
It's like,
boom,
oh,
there we go.
it's like, mom, we
Yeah.
gotta go. And this is another great uh scene too, like where we David Dunn wakes up, and he's in the hospital, and we see like another guy that's like getting operated on like in another room, and he's just like everything, like he's a little disheveled, but like everything's fine. He looks just kind of normal, and the doctor walks in, and I forget that actor's name. That guy has been in a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
He's one of those is one of those guys who's like, yeah, he's that guy from that thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I know that face.
Yeah, he's actually, you know what, what we were talking about, he was in House of Cards. He's the press secretary.
Okay. Well, I've never seen House of Cards.
So. Okay. Well, anyways, he's the press secretary.
Yeah, but I know that face.
Yeah. But anyways, he's like, "Oh, Mr. Dunn, how are you doing?" It's like, I'm all right. And it's like, did you, where exactly on the train were you? It's like, I was in the passenger car. Are you sure you didn't like get up out of your seat, or like, no, I was in the passenger car. It's like, okay, well, and it's like, why are you asking me these questions? It's like, well, here's the thing. You were in a train, your train derailed, and you and the guy in the room next to you are the only two survivors. And in about like 5 minutes, that guy's gonna make it. So you'll be the only survivor.
Yeah, it's like it's like in a real, I think really, it's really weird because it's a really clever way of delivering news, but but he's like telling him, it's like, yeah, in the next minute or so you'll be the sole survivor, and then you see like this huge like blood stain like coming through like the bandages.
God, so
it's like, holy shit.
His left side was crushed. It's like, oh, gross.
Yeah.
And then it's like you have, and here's what's miraculous is like, you don't have a concussion. You have no. You don't have a scratch on you. And it's like, oh shit. And you just see like all the families in that.
Yeah, like in the waiting room, it's just like, waiting to hear about their prospective families, and it's like, and like he's like just walking out, and it's like, oh man.
That's like, that has got to be one of the weirdest feelings. Like where you're the only person that made it, and you're like perfectly fine. So you have that, and you definitely see like where their son puts like David and his wife's like hands together. It's like, yeah, Dad's here, and you see like them like pull their hands apart like after like their son turns around. It's like, oh God, that's just like they really don't like each other.
Yeah, although I don't like, it's never stated like why their marriage is falling apart.
I have theories of why it did.
Anyways, yeah, this movie, so like the mystery of like David Dunn like starts to unravel, and then we're introduced to Samuel Jackson's character Elijah, and
I think because we get one more quick flashback to like a little bit of like an older Elijah, like when he's like a teenager. He's like kind of sulking in a room. He has a broken arm, and he's like, "No, I don't want to break any more bones. I'm tired of like being just they call me Mr. Glass at school. I hate it." And to encourage him to not be fearful, his mom says like, "Hey, you're not going to sulk in this room. I got a gift for you." And it's like, "Why?" It's like, "Who cares why? Just do you want it or not?" Yeah. It's like, "Well, go get it." And she leaves this box on a bench like outside of their apartment, but he has to go down and get it.
Right. He has to go into the world. He has to go out and face the world.
Yeah.
And then the mom uses comic books as a carrot.
Right. And but what I thought was like interesting is how they cut from like him, reading this comic to like to the present day of him being he runs an art gallery, that deals with comic book art.
Right.
And I was like, that's perfect. That's awesome. And so we see like David Dunn goes to the funeral of all the train crash victims, and he comes out, and we see a card on his dad, or on his under his windshield wiper, saying like, how many when was the last how many days in your life have you been sick? And he's like, and it's like, what the? And it's like that's the kind of the thought that starts getting him thinking like, what the heck? Yeah, when have I been sick? And that leads us down the road where he asked his wife, he asked like his boss, and he ends up taking his son to go to limited edition, which is the business that Elijah runs. And he's like, what, you left a card under my windshield, and we get the speech from Elijah, his philosophy on life,
Or like
about.
his theory about like what comic books are, like, and what are the real meaning behind it, and what is it like really telling us.
And see, here's where I think M. Night Shyamalan created something really interesting here, because sure, we could have had like another like comic book style movie, like we're like what we're getting so much of right now, actual comic book adaptations of characters, whether they be good or not, no one's denying that. But where Elijah's coming from is like, what his philosophy is that like, no, these are true stories that have been like filtered down and like given us into these like bullshit uh sellable stories, like that, like that you can sell in like at a comic book store or whatever. It's like, and it's like, but there's some sort of truth in there about like these grand adventures and people with like super strength or special abilities. And so to what extent I don't know. And so he's trying to test David Dunn's like, oh well, um, have you ever been sick? It's like, well, I'm about 75% sure that I haven't. It's like, well, that's hole number one. We don't, 75% isn't sure. And then it's like, we've been injured. It's like, oh, well, I had that knee injury. And it's like, well, that's hole number two. But like what I'm looking for is like, I scour the news, and what I was looking for is like what happened in this past accident is that, and he talks about like these other past like events where like multiple, like hundreds of people were killed,
Yeah, like a
and
plane crash here.
a hellfire there.
Yeah.
Then there's this train, huge train crash, one survivor, miraculously, no injuries, no scratches, um, and David Dunn's like, you know what, like you're full of shit. Like, what are you gonna ask me for my credit card information? And so he ends up like kind of just telling him to go to hell, essentially. Um, but Elijah will not be stopped. He really believes that like he's met possibly like the person he's been looking for all along, and so he goes to meet him at David's work. David works as a security guard at a local state university, and he's like, and Elijah's trying to like win him over a little bit and ask him like, kind of ask him about his life, ask him about like certain things, and like kind of try to get him to warm up to like what he's telling him. And David is like, walking through the line, and all of a sudden he stops, and like the kind of the sound, and we kind of get like where the sound
Right. There's a
stops.
sound cue. There's a sound cue.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, oh, something happened. And so we look, and he looks, and it's like, and he kind of gets and then he goes back up to hit one of his partners, and it's like, hey, why don't we start doing some pat downs? And he's like, and Elijah asks him like, what are you doing? And it's like, I got this sense like, something, someone's carrying something here. And it's like, well, what did you see something, or like is it just like a feeling, or like did you see something? It's like, I just got like this like strong sense that someone's carrying a weapon of some sort. And if like if I'm wrong, like things will just pat him down.
Yeah. Or like, yeah. Well, he initially, like, the sense that he's gets he tries to pass it off more as like observational thing where it's like because like the person he was trying to scare off was wearing like a fatigue jacket. Yeah, camouflage like fatigue jacket, and he said like, sometimes,
things get heavy.
Guys who wear that style of jacket, you're usually carrying like some sort of weapon, a knife, and then Elijah's like, well, yeah, but so you saw a knife, or you think he has a knife? And it's like, no, just it's just something, obviously David like knows something, but he's like saying like, nah, I didn't say like a knife. Sometimes it's, you know, uh, but he still gets the, but he still gets the guy to get out of the line. And he starts to get like a little bit short with Elijah and and so like Elijah goes away, but he on his way to his car, like he sees the same guy, and kind of chases him down.
He wants to see like he like because he did end up telling Elijah, like, yeah, I saw like a picture of like a silver gun with like a black grip, and so he's like, and because Elijah's starting to believe that he has powers. He doesn't know what they are yet, but like he suspects he has powers or abilities.
Right, yeah.
And so he ends up like that guy that was there, like, well, I got to see if this guy has like, if I got to prove this theory, I got to prove that this is correct, that this is happening. And so it's so, it hurts me like just watching him run after this guy.
Yeah, even though I've seen this movie before, and so like every single time it hurts my heart. It hurts my heart a little bit, like seeing him like trying to like gallop down the stairs to catch this guy, and just like it's coming, and then he trips on his feet, and then like every time he like impacts, like there's like the cat, like I believe it's purposeful by the director. It's like every time like he hits like the corner of the step, like and impacts, like boom, bam, bam. There's always like a shot of it
screaming the entire way down. It's like, oh God, it's so painful to watch.
Yeah.
You feel the bone snapping. Like that's
exactly.
how.
Yeah, and then of course you see like the visual representation, because because Elijah's cane is made of glass, and so like when it hits and it shatters, like it's just like the visual. It's the visual representation of what's happening to him.
Yeah.
It's just like oh God. But then like at the when he reaches the bottom of the stair to the subway, you see the guy in the camo jacket, and he jumps the turnstile, but as he jumps the turnstile, like the coat flutters up, and in his waistband you see a silver gun with a black strap, with a black grip.
And it's like,
and then in like that moment of great pain, like you see like this great big smile on Elijah's face, with just of vindication.
Yeah, and he passes out. And then so this is also a moment, because then we cut back to David. He goes home, and he starts like, I'm gonna, he's trying to find his son who's playing football. It's like, why are you playing football? You know your mom hates that stuff. Like, you got to, get out of there. And it's like, and
then of course the son tries to talk his dad into playing, but of course he refuses.
Yeah, but like you're starting to see like where I think that his son is believing like what Elijah is talking about, and he's starting to see his dad as someone with abilities as well.
Right. Yeah.
And so like when his dad says like, hey, I'm gonna go work out, and it's like, oh, well, I'll help you, and it's like, sorry guys, I'm gonna help my dad work out. And so he ends up going to like doing some bench presses, and he's like, you see him kind of struggling a little bit. It's like, God, it's like, how much did you put on? And it's like he looked. It's like that's too much. That's like he like lifted like 250 pounds or whatever. And it's like,
Yeah.
how much is that? Like the most you ever lift? How much have you? How much is the most you've ever lifted? It's like that was it. Yeah, I've never lifted more than that. It's like, oh,
Yeah. And so yeah.
I'll take some off. And then he's like, okay. And then he like lifts it up again. It's like,
Yeah. You see him straining still, and it's like, you know.
uh, he was like,
But he's still able to do it. And
yeah.
so like, and then when he gets it into first position, he's like, it's like, how much was that? It's like, and it's like the son kind of like, in awe, but like, in awe of it's like, I actually added more.
You added?
Yeah.
How much did you add? It's like 20 pounds, like 270. It's like, let's see how much
Yeah,
else.
and then but then he starts getting into it, and it's like add some more, and so like the kid adds like all the plates that he had,
How much
and
did
again,
you time? All of it. All of it. It's like, let's see what else we can find.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
and
that's a great scene. It's kind of like the testing of the hero's abilities, and that's always a fun like scene to have.
it was that whole scene was fun.
Yeah,
Just like where
yeah,
his
and then
son.
like because the son is like it's like because it's a little bit of a thing where it's like every son believes their father is like the strongest man like in the world, but now like this kid like actually has proof and has like seen it, and so.
And so that was a really great scene.
Hmm.
And it's like so you have that. Then we get where Elijah he, because obviously like David is kind of pretty much pushed him away. Elijah has to go in. We see his recovery process. We hear about like
Yeah,
what
like
act.
how what his injuries were.
Oh God, so
You know, like
it's just hurts to
like
hear it.
half a dozen like broken ribs, like a radial like fracture, which is
Like
like
this.
that's fucking like yeah, that's like yeah. For those of you who don't know, like a radial fracture is like when like a twisting.
Yeah,
It's just and I've broken like what like 16 places. Like oh Jesus.
it's horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but then you have he ends up. We see him go to like physical therapy, and then we actually learn what David's wife does for a living. She's a physical therapist, and of course he chose his wife's place of work to like where he starts peppering her with a bunch of questions, knowing full well who
Like
she
who
is.
she is, like who her husband is.
Yeah, and so he's trying to like get in that way,
Mm-hmm.
and he tells his whole philosophy and all that. Um, I'm trying to think what happens right after that. Um, oh, I think it was after that, like, because there was the. Is this like where? Uh, is this where the kid pulls the gun on David?
Yeah, because the wife comes home and like tells David about the interaction with Elijah, and that's when like the son pulls a gun on his dad, and of course both mom and dad are freaked out. It's like what? It's like what are you doing? It's like and the son is like utterly convinced that like nothing is gonna happen to his dad. Um, and like yeah, it's like yeah, and it's like and like both the parents have to talk down the kid from shooting the dad, which they are able to do.
God, that's one of the most like tense scenes in the
Yeah.
movie. Because it's like afterwards, because David confronts Elijah after that. It's like you know what my kid did because of you, and it's like he could have shot me. He was trying to like to prove that your stupid theory. It's like I never said you couldn't die. And it's like
It's almost like a reverse of like the what is it? The Hangover movie where the second one where like the guys get in like this crazy like car chase thing and like they jump like a river, and then Chang's character is like it's like yeah, but did you die?
Yeah. Oh, it also kind of reminds me too, like that whole scene reminds me of there was an incident like the original Superman, George Reeves,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and which was also presented in Hollywoodland, starring Ben Affleck,
Mm-hmm.
uh, where there was a kid who believed that George Reeves, Superman, was real,
Mm-hmm.
and he pulled a gun on George Reeves, like at an event, saying
Mm-hmm.
like, it's like you're Superman, you can take a bullet, right? And it's like, and it's of that. Well, I mean, it's Hollywoodland is obviously it's a movie, so it's gonna
Mm-hmm.
play it up a little bit, but that really happened, and it's like Jesus Christ, that so, where like that kid has problems. It's like, uh, but in this case, in this universe, where David Dunn, he is a superhero in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't know it yet, but he is.
Mm-hmm.
And his son believes that his dad's a superhero, and he's like, I'm trying to prove to you that you have powers. Damn it! But
Yeah.
like, yeah, he has super strength, but who knows? He might be able to be killed by bullets. You don't know, kid. Like
Yeah.
it was
Well,
dumb.
we do learn that he does have a weakness, which is turns out it's hydrophobia.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah, it's water. Um,
Yeah, of course, because of some past trauma. Uh,
is it
but
is
yeah, like yeah, like
trauma?
but
I
hmm?
don't think it is trauma though. I think it actually is like
Well,
just the weakness.
no, it is trauma because of what the school nurse told him.
But I think like because normally like when even if like you drown or whatever, like he people don't drown quite like that. Like that, his
Well,
whatever like.
I think it is psychological because like it then it like makes him forget that he has like powers and
You know what I likened? You know what I likened it to
hmm,
was with uh in One Piece, which is an anime, that a lot of the characters that have special abilities,
hmm,
there's these fruits that are called the devil fruits.
yeah,
When you bite into them, you gain powers from them. Like whether it be like, the main character, he becomes a rubber man. He's like the Reed Richard from
hmm,
Fantastic Four. He's a rubber man. But when he used to be like a fantastic swimmer, but all of a sudden, after he ate the devil fruit, when they hit water, they sink like a rock. Like they lose the ability to swim. So
yeah,
that's kind of like what I likened um, the thing with what we call it with
with David Dunn.
yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe this is like also born out because of the subsequent movies. But I just thought more was like more psychological trauma in that like because of like the panic state that he was in, he wasn't able to like focus, and so like that is what is like his kryptonite and like takes away like his abilities.
Well, now we never see like now we hear about it in the first movie, but we actually never see a representation of anything. But apparently, Elijah has the same issue with water. He talks
Oh, he
about it on
does.
with the like how he has a similar issue with water, like where like it's all of a sudden like he swallows it too fast and like he can't like.
Oh yeah.
And that's what I'm wondering like what was going on with that, like with that too, like that's actually I would say is like one flaw, because we never actually in the whole trilogy we actually never see any like where we see like Elijah's weakness to water.
Right. Yeah. I mean, or that maybe he just said that because he wanted to gain more of David's trust.
Maybe that's also possible.
Right. Because I mean, if essentially your weakness is the world, then I mean.
True. Yeah. That's true. I mean, like his only power is his mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, like so. Going through that, he ends up, through all these events, like Elijah ends up he becomes a little bit depressed. We get this scene in like the comic book store, like where the guy thinks he's like jerking off to like Japanese comics, in the and it's like, oh, you're just a guy in a wheelchair. Oh shit! It kind of like when people look at your hands, like, oh shit. Sorry, dude.
Yeah. It's like that cop that didn't give me a speeding ticket. It's like, what does my hands have to do with my foot?
Who cares? You got out of it.
I know, I got out of it. I'm not complaining. I'm just asking the question.
Fuck. So yeah, so there was that whole scene, and it's like he's kind of like, maybe I'm crazy. Like maybe this isn't like a guy that has powers or whatever. So, but he ends up like kind of like finding a comic that like kind of like drops in his lap. That's like it's like Security Man or something along those lines, and it's like he ends up making one last ditch effort to reach David, and he calls him and says like, why do you think that you've chosen security? You could do any other job in the world, but you chose to protect people. And it's like, what? And just think about it. Like, and you made all these like observations, and for whatever reason his phone call inspires David to go and go to like the train wreckage, like where they're investigating the train wreckage. And he ends up having a flashback to this like car accident, like where he injured his knee in the past. And hails down like the truck, and he's asking like, oh, is everyone okay? It's like, I think her leg's broken. It's like, what about you? Are you okay? And he actually, he did know, but he's actually been lying about this the entire time,
right.
that he was
injured. That he was injured, yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I lied about that. It's like, you lied, and Elijah called it right off the bat. It's like, you lied about this for a woman. Like that's what, a football career is 10 years, but love is forever. Of course you took that. Of course you took that choice. But like you have been in a state of like sadness the entire time because you feel like you've suppressed yourself and you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And it is this opportunity that Elijah has presented him where it's like, you can become what you're supposed to be. You have abilities, use them. And that's where like we start to see the awakening, where David starts to like test his powers. Here's something that's interesting, right? So we see his first like time, like where he's starting to like kind of let people brush up against him at the stadium, and we see there's one like lady and a little boy that knock up against him, and we see like where there's like a little bit of a quick flash, right? So there's a fan theory that is James McAvoy's character and his mom, because we never see like what the flash was. And it was confirmed by M. Night Shyamalan. It says like, that's exactly right. That's exactly what I was going for. That we don't see the Flash in Unbreakable, but when that mom brushed up against Bruce Willis, he saw her like the horrible nature of like
the abuse.
Yeah, of the abuse of Kevin Wendell Crumb. That's what he saw, and that was like that was a fan theory for a long time, especially when Split came out. And M. Night Shyamalan confirmed that. It's like, yeah, that's exactly what I was going for there.
Whoa. Yes, I mean he had this planned out for
Yeah,
a while.
this is where I think like he had like planned, like he wasn't sure if it was going to get done, but he put those like little like
Right, but
seedlings.
he laid the foundation for it to pay off.
Yeah, because you could watch Unbreakable and be satisfied. Like, this could be a one and done movie,
Mm-hmm.
but there's enough there where like, oh, there's definitely there could totally be sequels.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, so he starts to test out his power, and then there's a guy that brushes up against him who's the director.
Yeah, self-insert, just like he did in Sixth Sense, where he was like the doctor.
Yeah, and but with in this case, um, he is he because his power he hasn't honed his power yet.
Mm-hmm.
So the flash that he gets from the guy that brushes up against him, who is played by the director, he's seeing a flash from the past, but he doesn't realize it yet, and so he's like trying to check him for drugs, because he sees a drug deal going down,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, but then he finds nothing on the guy, and it's like, and so he starts to doubt himself a little bit. It's like, well, I don't know. But in reality, it's like, yeah, you saw the right thing just at a wrong time.
Right.
You haven't figured it out yet. Um, so we get that whole scene, and then eventually, like he talks to Elijah, gets it kind of like, it's like, hey, you got to go to where people are, and you got to just like, you got to work this out. Like, so he knows he has the strength. He knows he has super strength. He knows he has the ability to see things, like people who with like malice, like what I say. He's able to sense people with malicious intent, whatever it might be, whether they've done bad things in the past or they're about to do like bad things. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
like he sees things from like the recent past,
Right.
and so he goes to, of course, he's going to go to the train station. That's where like a lot of people are going to be at, and you see like the horror on his face because like he's really sees a lot of evil. We see the
Right.
college.
He's seeing the unveiled like darkness within humanity.
Right,
Even
and
in even in like this small like confined area that is like like kind of like the hub for like the city, which is the train station. And you
yeah,
see like this, you see the call, the frat guy who basically rapes a drunken girl, or you see like the abusive mother towards a child. Yeah, just seeing like the worst of the worst.
yeah, and then all of a sudden, like he, because there was another one that he saw that was like he was gonna start to go after,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's another guy that bumps into him who's a janitor, and it's like he sees this guy like murdering this, running, kind of breaking into this guy's house, murdering him. It's like, oh shit, and this is like the point too, like where the soundtrack of this movie, what the hell is the guy's name? Because he's pretty much done all of Shyamalan's movies too, especially in this run. Um, who is who's the sound the James Newton Howard. He's the guy that did the soundtrack for this movie. Great, and you get like the subtle theme of David Dunn, like especially like when his powers are awakening. Like I just it's uh like this tense awakening. Like I that's the best way I can describe it. It's really good. It's really well done.
Mm-hmm.
And so he starts to follow this guy that sees has committed this murder, and uh, then he ends up going into the house that the guy walks into. It's like exactly the same house that he saw in the vision, and he looks to confirm, like, because he saw like the the dead dad, and he sees him in the hall. It's like, oh, that's the vision I had. I'm in the right place, and he runs upstairs. he hears crying, and he sees like the two kids, strapped to a bar in the bars in the bathroom. He unhooks them. He sees like the mom who's strapped to the radiator in the master bedroom, and he like at at the time we think she's still alive because we see him like kind of like same thing he did with the kids, and he's looking for the guy who ends up like popping up out of nowhere, knocking him into like down the balcony and into like like what we think is just like this tarp that's like has like water in it, and it's like turns out it's a tarp across the pool that's like the pool cover, and of course it's like it's raining like fucking crazy. um and so he's like all of a sudden like he wakes up, he kind of gets out of the water, and then he sees the thing like starting to collapse in on itself. um and he's like, oh shit. He's like, oh, that the way that they filmed this, like the struggle with him in the pool was great. And it's like you feel like you're drowning at the same time. Like it
Right.
looks horrifying. And the only salvation we see is like the pool
The
skew
pool
hand.
skimmer, yeah, the pool skimmer that the kids go and like help him out with.
Yeah, and it's like, and like just like that, as soon as he gets out of the water, that yeah, it's like I was like, yeah, he's out of there. It's like it feels like it's now it's ass kicking time.
Right.
Um, and so it's just it's a great scene. He ends up killing the killer. And it turns, and obviously like he unhooks the mom from the radiator who flops over. Is like, oh, she's dead. Now here's the thing, because he like when he first enters the room, he goes, shh. So was she alive at that moment, or and was like killed in the subsequent like time that like David Dunn was trying to escape from the pool, or was she already
Perhaps.
in with?
Perhaps that's probably likely.
Yeah. And the whole idea of like the killer just like spitting beer at her, that
Hmm.
was like, really rough. Like because he's actually spitting on
Yeah, yeah,
her.
yeah,
It's like, oh, that's gotta
yeah.
be horrible.
Yeah, initially you think like he's just like kind of like pouring beer or like splashing beer or whatever drink that he has on her, but it's like no, he's spitting beer at her.
Yeah, it's like, oh god, that's horrible. Like, um, so yeah, so we get that, and that's really like that, and people might be disappointed. That's the action scene in the movie. Like that's the big action scene.
Yeah, that's the big fight scene. Um,
Yeah, and that's what I'm
but
saying.
again, but you have to realize is like this guy, this monster of a human being. He's not the big bad. You
No,
know.
well, but that's the thing. We don't know that yet.
Right.
And but like all of a sudden, like there's this moment like where this moment like where he feels like I I am who I'm supposed to be. Like David Dunn has awoken.
Hmm.
He doesn't feel like the cucked loser that he's felt like for his entire life
Hmm.
since college. When he made that sacrifice to be with his wife, he's felt like a loser ever since.
Hmm.
And that's why his marriage is falling apart. That's why like a lot of these things are happening. At least that's my theory. That's
Hmm.
why his marriage isn't working out, because his wife senses that like that he probably blames her for his college career, his football career ending, and that like he never got to be who he wanted to be because of her and because
Hmm.
of like what happened.
Right.
And I think because of that, like she has their marriage was not right, and we don't see like what exactly happened, but that's my theory.
Hmm.
And so he ends up going home, and throughout the movie, him and his wife have actually been trying to work things through. Like they realize like this him surviving that train accident was a sign that like we should work things out. We should try to like make things work.
Yeah.
Uh, not give up on our marriage, which is admirable. That's a good thing. And there's the one of those moments like where like, when did you know our marriage was starting to have troubles? And he said like there was a moment like where I woke up from a nightmare and I didn't wake you up to tell you about it. that's when I knew we were in trouble. And this moment after he defeats that monster, he goes home, carries his wife from like the downstairs bedroom that she's been staying in because they've been sleeping separately.
Right.
Carries her up to like their master bedroom, which they've not been sleeping in. He's been sleeping with his son. She's been sleeping in a downstairs guest bedroom. He carries her up to the master bedroom and tells her like, I had a nightmare, and she says, "Tell me about it." And we don't see it, but we know
right. Well, no, yeah, but then he says like, "Oh, it's over now."
Yeah, that's what she says. It's over now, and you know that they hooked up. That it's so clear. But it's and then at the breakfast table in the morning, like they're happy, like
Yeah.
it's changed.
Even because like in that kitchen, it's like it's always like shot like so darkly, but that's like the first time in the movie where it's like there's actually like it's actually kind of light in there.
Yeah, and like the son is like weirded out by everything. It's like this is weird, and his the mom
The mom is like happy because she got that good D, and then
he
so it's
really
like,
needs.
I'm making French toast. And so, like, she goes and, like, starts making the kids some French toast. And, and then, the dad, David Dunn, like, he slides the newspaper to him.
With it's this illustrated a great. Now, see, I love the comic book illustration of, like, this masked, vigilante.
This hooded hero.
And he just,
they have this moment, and, like, he's just, like, he says, like, it's like, yeah. Which gets the kid like all emotional because it's like his dad is finally the hero that he sees him as.
And David's emotional too. Like in the moment, he's like because he says thank you to his son. You made this happen, and he's like, but he's like, don't.
Yeah, don't tell mom. Yeah.
Yeah. And so afterwards, we see he's so excited because then he goes to tell Elijah about what happened, and we see Elijah doing his like art gallery.
Yeah, he's like schmoozing some patrons, and then like there's like this quiet moment between David and Elijah's mom.
Yeah, and what's great is like the where Elijah is talking to like some of like the people that had come, the comics that are there. There's Thor. There is, I think, a Captain America, and like it's like characters that ended up being in the MC, that are part of the
Avengers,
big MCU.
The Avengers.
Yeah, and so so it was like, oh, I think that's hilarious. That so there's that moment, and so Elijah takes him to like his like back like private area,
back room,
and he's like starting to tell him about like it's like, did you wake up with the sadness anymore? It's like, no, it's gone. And it's like, all right, things have just this is just the beginning. This is awesome. I know what my purpose is in this life. And he's like, I need to shake your hand, not knowing that like because I don't think he fully knows exactly how David's powers work. And so he shakes his hand, and that's where the twist happens in this movie, and this is how it ends. Where
the famous M. Night Shyamalan twist,
dude. And I was like, no fucking way. Where all the disasters that Elijah's been talking about, like like that he's been scouring the news about, he created.
Yeah, he was the cause.
The plane bombing.
And it was all in pursuit of David Dunn.
Yeah, and the train crash, like that David was
train
on.
crash, the plane crash that he noted earlier, like all of the like the big like almost like terrorist attacks that happened to him.
Yeah.
Or that have happened recently.
Yeah,
but yeah.
So, and you just look at that horrified look on his face, like, oh God, what have I done?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think it's like.
And here's the thing, though. I don't think that those are the only. It's alluded to that I don't think those are the only disasters that Elijah was the head man in, because we see all the newspaper clippings of like all these other disasters.
Right. You see like all the blueprints and the schematics of other things. Like so, like Elijah has been doing this for a while. You know, in search of David.
Yeah. And it's like, I found you. And it's like in the comics, like, you know, it's like it's weird how like you can tell like who the enemy is gonna be when like, you know, the them and like
because they're the exact opposite of the hero.
Yeah. And a lot of times they end up being best friends.
Mm-hmm. Which is true, because a lot of people don't know this, but early on in like the Superman comics, you know, him and Lex Luthor were good friends.
Yep.
And like and him being bald, it was an accident that involved Superman, and Lex Luthor blamed Superman for losing his hair. And that's kind of what the split happened.
Well, we also kind of see that, like, you know, they definitely did that in like the Smallville series. You know,
way back when.
Clark were best friends.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's true. You have Professor Xavier and Magneto.
Mm-hmm.
You have, yeah, there's all sorts of, you know, Captain America and the Winter Soldier.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all these, you know, great um, you know, Harvey Dent and Bruce
Batman.
Wayne, and yeah, it's I can count numerous places where that's true.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I had to say, like, that was a great twist. Bruce Willis and Sam Jackson together are amazing. We're gonna see that again next week when we do Die Hard with a Vengeance. This is one of M. Night Shyamalan's great films. It obviously, like, you know, I would say, like, even I would say this is probably the weakest of the three, because I think Split is amazing, and I really like Glass. A lot of people did not care for Glass, but I think it was so well done. It was very fitting, and it does.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was a proper conclusion to like the whole like Unbreakable like
And I think
Split
it could burn into
trilogy.
more. I think they could do more with it. He could do a lot more with it, because
Right.
like Unbreakable, it does leave things open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, yeah, because it also introduces this whole different element of like that secret society, you know, that kind of like keeps like supers in check or whatever.
Yeah, and it's like, and who knows how long they've been doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows who has had abilities that like have been where, you know, probably like, you know, Elijah didn't have to go through like his process had it not been for those people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah. What if they brought Elijah on, you know, into the secret society?
Yeah, exactly. Um, so yeah, it's just
But
like it's like,
yeah.
but this is a great movie. I
Mm-hmm.
really liked it. Now, if you're looking for something that's like, you know, super action packed, you know, fast paced, rock'em sock'em, you know, type of action movie,
Yeah.
action.
This is more of a thinking man's comic book movie.
Yeah, and even like, you know, Elijah says, like, you know, throughout this is you know, throughout like the trilogy, like, this is an origin story. This is not like, you know, some limited edition print. You know, this is just the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, that's exactly right. This is really just the beginning. But yeah, that's all I got to say about Unbreakable. Just, I think it's a great movie, and
Yeah.
yeah, I liked it when I first came out. When I watched it, I hadn't watched it probably since like 2002, and then I ended up watching it like two or three times, preparing for the review, and I just loved it so much.
Yeah. It was really interesting to me that that it wasn't David that slept in the guest room. It was his wife.
Yeah, that's the because neither of them were sleeping in the master bedroom. David was
Yeah,
sleeping.
that's right. David was sleeping with his son, and then like the wife was sleeping in the spare bedroom. But it was weird that like she went up to him.
Yeah.
Like especially like the time that they're reconciling, it's like she went up to him.
Which makes me think that it was her fault.
Right.
Because at the beginning we would think that like, oh, David's kind of a lecherous dickhead, but he wasn't.
Right. Yeah, so it's probably so it could have been, or more likely, it was the wife's infidelity, or some sort of like betrayal.
Yeah, I don't think that she slept with anybody either. I think it was just more
Maybe,
of like,
or it was just like, or maybe it was like her own guilt, like for like not allowing him to like be who he's supposed to be, and so
there was this
because like, but yeah, it's like because like she sleeping downstairs is definitely a signal that she's the one with guilt.
Yeah. So yeah, there's definitely like we never find out, but that's
But
at
that's
least
fine.
it's just interesting. I like
Yeah.
and I
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, those are all my thoughts on Unbreakable. I love this movie. Think it's great. I'm actually kind of glad we chose this over The Sixth Sense because don't get me wrong, I love The Sixth Sense. I did go through all of the that great run of M Night Shyamalan to prepare for the
Of course
review
you did.
and but I'm glad we chose this one because I think it's more relevant, especially with like all the comic book movies that are out.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and yeah, I like this is something so different, and I love it.
All right, let's give our ratings and we'll wrap it up.
I'm gonna give this. I'm gonna give it a 4.5. It like I said, I know it's a little slow pace for some people, but yeah, I think that the subtle acting of Bruce because I this is one of the best acted Bruce Willis movies out there. I think because he's so subtle in his performance as David Dunn, and even like this is actually one of Samuel L. Jackson's best performances too. Yeah, he's not really over the top crazy, and it's funny because you get the exact
Well,
opposite.
actually, yeah. I mean, well, we find out later, but he is like over the top, but just not in like the usual Sam Jackson way. And
Well, what I was gonna say, like, yeah, he develops into that. Mr. Glass is not Elijah. Mr. Glass is like what he becomes after this.
right.
But what I'm saying, as far as like next week we're gonna do Die Hard with a Vengeance. The way Samuel Jackson portrays Zeus as opposed to Elijah, completely different.
Night and day, night and day.
Same thing with Bruce Willis. John McClane is not David Dunn.
Yeah, exactly.
So it just shows great acting performances of both of them in this film.
Yeah.
The twist is great.
Yeah.
Love it. Love the movie.
Yeah, I'm just gonna come in just under you, and I'm gonna give this a 4. Just because, yeah, it is like slower. Even though I still enjoyed it. It is still like a bit of a slow burn, and uh, yeah, you really have to like look. You really have to be paying attention to this movie. Not that it's a bad thing that it's. I'm not saying that I'm knocking it because like it's not one of those like just flip it on and just like leave it running in the background sort of movies.
No.
But for some people it might be a hindrance. So I'm acknowledging that fact. So yeah, 4 for me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, like the reason I don't give it a 5. I do love the cinematography. I love the score of the movie. The reason I don't give it a 5 or anything higher than that is because of the trilogy, it's the weakest.
Yeah,
But
it
you,
is. I mean, yeah, and to M Night Shyamalan's credit, he probably was making this movie with like, I mean, yes, he did have a grand plan, but he made this movie thinking that this would be the only one, and so like he couldn't be super obvious about like connections and whatever.
right.
So
But
I mean, to his credit, I give him a little bit of leeway, but yeah, it's the weakest in the trilogy.
yeah, I'm just going based off of like 2020, just like solely on it being from like 2000. But it's just like when you look at like Split and Mr. Glass,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's just like you need to watch Unbreakable to understand and enjoy those movies.
Right.
But and to understand like the twists in those movies, but like it's yeah, it's great. I highly recommend it. I think everyone should watch it.
All right, there you have it. That's our review of Unbreakable. Robert gives a 4.5. I give it a 4. Definitely a movie to watch, particularly if you enjoyed, Split and Glass, and yeah, this is a very important movie to watch.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I think you can still enjoy the other two movies, but having the context of Unbreakable, really elevates the latter two.
Absolutely.
So yeah, do yourself a favor and watch Unbreakable.
Yes, sir.
All right, that'll bring us to the end of tonight's stream. I hope you had a good time. I had a good time. I know Rob always has a good time.
Always. I always have a good time.
Always. Just a little note: there will be no stream next week because I'll be heading out of town for a personal trip. But we will be back the following week. So in 2 weeks, we will be back with Rob's favorite movie of all time, or one of them, anyways.
Favorite guilty pleasure movie of all time.
Yeah, and that again, he alluded Die Hard with a Vengeance. Again, starring Bruce Willis, and again Samuel Jackson.
God, fucking love it.
Yeah. All right, that'll do it for us tonight. Don't forget to check out the library of other content that we have. The Circle Edger's main podcast, Nocturnal Transmissions, of course, and Rob's gaming show, Up by Up Down. Don't forget to follow us on our various social media accounts, Twitter and Letterboxd at PodcastCOJ, and Instagram at Circle Edger's Podcast. And with all that said, we thank you for joining us. Come back in 2 weeks, and we'll do it all over again. Have a good night.
What am I going to do next week?
That's on you.